Hello, travelers of the night, and welcome back to Midnight Lullaby. These stories drift through the static, a signal that drowns out the noise of the waking world and guides you into slumber. Before the signal slips away, leave a trace. Tell me which part of the world you're listening from, so I know how far this broadcast reaches. And if the whispers keep you company, a like and a subscribe help keep the transmission alive. Now, close your eyes, relax. The broadcast begins. The photograph was unremarkable when I first developed it. Just another shot from my weekend hiking trip to the Cascade Mountains. I'd been experimenting with film photography again, drawn to the tactile process of loading cartridges, advancing frames, and waiting to see what emerged in the developer bath. There was something magical about not knowing exactly what you'd captured until hours later, when the images materialized like memories surfacing from deep water. This particular frame showed the valley overlook where I'd stopped for lunch. Rolling hills covered in October foliage, a thin creek winding through the basin below, and the distant peaks shrouded in afternoon haze. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would make me look twice under normal circumstances. But as I hung the print to dry in my makeshift darkroom, really just the spare bathroom with blackout curtains, something in the corner caught my eye. A shadow that seemed too geometric, too purposeful to be a natural formation or a flaw in the developing process. I waited until the print was completely dry, then carried it to my desk lamp for closer examination. The anomaly was subtle, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. In the lower right corner of the photograph, where the hillside met the creek, there appeared to be markings on a large boulder. Not shadows or water stains, but actual markings. Carved lines that formed shapes I didn't recognize. I pulled out my magnifying glass, a habit from my work as a freelance researcher, and leaned closer. The markings were definitely intentional, though they followed no alphabet or writing system I'd ever encountered. They reminded me of hieroglyphs, but more angular, more alien. Some looked like stylized animals or birds, others like abstract geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change when I stared at them too long. The strange thing was, I distinctly remembered sitting on that very boulder during my lunch break. I'd eaten my sandwich while looking out over the valley, running my hands absently over the rock's surface. It had felt smooth, weathered by centuries of rain and wind. There had been no carvings, no markings of any kind. Yet here they were in the photograph, clear as day when viewed through the magnifying glass, invisible to my naked eye even now. I decided to scan the image at high resolution, hoping that digital enhancement might reveal more details. My scanner was an older model, but it did good work with black and white prints. As the scanning head moved slowly across the photograph, casting its bright line of light, I watched the progress bar inch toward completion. The scanned image appeared on my monitor, and I immediately zoomed in on the corner with the markings. On screen, they were even more prominent than they'd appeared on the physical print. The symbols seemed to have a depth to them, as if they'd been carved, not just into the surface of the boulder, but into the very fabric of the photograph itself. I began tracing them with my finger on the monitor, trying to identify patterns or recurring elements. Some symbols appeared multiple times in different combinations, suggesting they might represent letters or syllables in an unknown language. Others appeared only once, perhaps representing complex concepts that required no repetition. As I studied the markings, I became aware of a strange sensation, a tingling in my fingertips where they touched the screen, as if the image were somehow conducting electricity. The feeling spread up my arm, not unpleasant, but definitely present, like static electricity, but warmer, more purposeful. I pulled my hand away and blinked hard. The symbols on the screen seemed to flicker slightly, their edges shifting in and out of focus. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. The markings were stable now, but I could have sworn they'd moved, rearranged themselves into a different configuration while I wasn't looking directly at them. Over the following days, I found myself returning to the photograph obsessively. I printed multiple copies at different sizes, scanned it at various resolutions, even tried photographing the print itself with my digital camera. In every iteration, the symbols appeared slightly different, not dramatically so, but enough to make me question whether I was seeing the same thing twice. I began keeping a journal of the variations I observed. Day 3. The bird-like symbol in the upper portion of the cluster now faces left instead of right. The geometric pattern below it has gained an additional line. Day 5, the 3 new symbols have appeared at the edge of the group. They're smaller than the others, almost like footnotes or annotations. Day 70. The central symbol, the one that looks like a stylized eye, appears to be watching me. When I move the photograph, it seems to track my movement. I knew how absurd this sounded, even to myself. Photographs don't change. Symbols don't move. Ancient carvings don't appear and disappear based on the observer's attention. But the evidence was right there in front of me, documented in multiple formats across multiple days. I decided to research the location where I'd taken the photograph. The Cascade Valley overlook was a popular hiking destination, but it wasn't particularly well documented online. I found a few travel blogs and hiking guides, but nothing that mentioned any archaeological significance or Native American historical sites in the area. That's when I discovered the academic paper. Dr. Sarah Chen, an anthropologist from the University of Washington, had published an article in the Journal of Pacific Northwest Archaeology about anomalous petroglyphs found throughout the Cascade Range. According to her research, there were dozens of sites containing symbols that didn't match any known indigenous writing systems. The symbols appeared to be ancient, possibly predating known human habitation in the region. But they shared characteristics with markings found in completely unrelated geographical areas. Similar symbols had been documented in caves in South America, on standing stones in Scotland, and carved into temple walls in Southeast Asia. What made Chen's research particularly unsettling was her observation that the symbols seemed to appear and disappear based on documentation methods. Traditional archaeological photography often failed to capture them at all, while certain types of film and specific lighting conditions made them clearly visible. Some symbols only appeared in photographs taken by people who had no prior knowledge of their existence. I found Dr. Chen's email address and sent her a cautious message, attaching a low-resolution version of my photograph. I explained that I was an amateur photographer who had captured something unusual during a hiking trip. and I wondered if she might have encountered similar phenomena in her research. Her reply came within hours. "Thank you for sharing your photograph. The symbols you've captured match several from my database, but there are also new variations I haven't seen before. Would you be willing to meet in person? I'm particularly interested in how you came to photograph this site, and whether you've noticed any changes in the image since developing it. There are aspects of this phenomenon that are difficult to discuss in writing. Best regards, Badyaker, Sarah Chen." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near the university campus. Dr. Chen was younger than I'd expected, probably in her early 30s, with prematurely gray hair and the kind of intense focus that suggested she'd been staring at puzzles for too long. She brought a leather messenger bag filled with photographs, printouts, and notebooks covered in sketches of symbols. "The first thing you need to understand," she said, spreading her materials across our table, "is that these markings exist in a state of quantum uncertainty. They're simultaneously there and not there, visible and invisible, depending on the observer and the method of observation." She showed me dozens of photographs from sites across the Pacific Northwest. Some were completely blank, ordinary rocks and cliff faces with no markings visible. Others contained symbols similar to what I'd found, but in different configurations. A few showed symbols that seemed to move or change between shots, even when taken seconds apart. The traditional scientific approach doesn't work here. Dr. Chen continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, despite the busy coffee shop around us. Peer review fails when the evidence literally changes based on who's looking at it. I've had colleagues examine the same photograph and see completely different symbols, or no symbols at all. She pulled out a print that made my breath catch. It was a photograph of the exact boulder where I'd eaten lunch, but taken from a different angle and clearly at a different time of year. The symbols were there, but they were different from what I'd captured. Where my photograph showed the eye, like symbol in the center, hers displayed what looked like a spiral or whirlpool pattern. "I took this photograph 3 years ago," she said. "I've been monitoring that particular site ever since." The symbols change with each observer, but they follow certain patterns, certain rules. "What kind of rules?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "The symbols respond to consciousness, to attention, due to the specific mental state of the person observing them. They're not just ancient carvings. They're a form of communication that adapts itself to the receiver." She opened one of her notebooks and showed me pages of meticulous sketches. Symbol after symbol, variation after variation, all documented with dates, times, and notes about the photographer's mental state when the image was captured. People who find these symbols by accident, like you did, tend to see them as static markings at first. But the more attention you pay to them, the more active they become. They start to change, to evolve, to respond to your thoughts and feelings. I thought about my own experience, how the symbols had seemed to shift and rearrange themselves each time I looked at the photograph. What are they trying to communicate? That's the question I've been pursuing for 5 years, Dr. Chen replied. And I think I'm finally beginning to understand. They're not trying to tell us something that happened in the past. They're trying to show us something that's happening right now, in a layer of reality we normally can't perceive. She leaned closer, her voice barely audible above the ambient noise of the coffee shop. I believe these symbols are a form of writing that exists partially outside our normal space-time. They're impressions left by observers from dimensions or states of being that intersect with ours at specific locations and under specific conditions. The tingling sensation I'd felt when touching the computer screen returned, spreading through my fingertips and up my arms. You're saying they're messages from what? Other dimensions. Aliens. I'm saying they're evidence of consciousness interacting with reality in ways we don't understand. And once you've seen them, once you've made that initial contact, they begin to see you back. As if to emphasize her point, she pulled out her phone and opened a photo gallery. The first image showed a blank cliff face, completely unremarkable. But as she scrolled through dozens of shots of the same location, taken over the course of several months, I watched symbols gradually appear, multiply, and grow more complex. The progression was like watching a conversation develop, with each photograph capturing a new exchange in an ongoing dialogue. This is what happens when you maintain contact, she said. The symbols don't just appear in photographs anymore. They start showing up in other places. Reflections in windows, shadows on walls, patterns in clouds. The boundary between the documented phenomenon and lived experience begins to dissolve. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Are you saying I should stop looking at the photograph? I'm saying it's probably too late for that. Once the connection is established, it tends to persist whether you actively engage with it or not. The question becomes, do you want to understand what's happening to you, or do you want to be a passive recipient of increasingly strange experiences? She gathered her materials and stood up. Think about it. If you decide you want to pursue this further, I have resources that might help. But I want to warn you, this path changes people. I'm not the same person I was when I first started documenting these symbols. None of my research subjects are. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at the photograph of my hiking trip. The symbols seemed more prominent now, as if our conversation had somehow enhanced their visibility. The eye, like marking in the center, definitely appeared to be looking directly at me, tracking my movement as I shifted the print from side to side. That night, I developed a new roll of film I'd shot around the city during the past week. Street photography, nothing special. Or so I thought until the prints emerged from the developer bath. The symbols were there. Not prominently, not obviously, but there nonetheless. Carved in the side of a building in one shot, traced in frost on a car window in another, formed by the arrangement of fallen leaves in a third. Always subtle, always in the corners or edges of the frame, but unmistakably present. I spread the prints across my desk and studied them under the magnifying glass. The symbols from my hiking photograph were recurring throughout these urban images, but they were accompanied by new markings I didn't recognize. It was as if the original message was being expanded, elaborated upon, or perhaps translated into a more complex vocabulary. The tingling in my fingertips had become a constant sensation now, present whenever I touched anything related to photography. My camera, film cartridges, even the light switch for my darkroom. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was impossible to ignore. Like a reminder that something fundamental had changed in my relationship with the act of image making. I began carrying my camera everywhere, shooting roll after roll of film with a compulsiveness that surprised me. Every developed batch contained more symbols, more evidence of this impossible alphabet that seemed to be writing itself across the visual landscape of my daily life. The patterns were becoming clearer. Certain symbols appeared in specific types of locations. The spiral pattern tended to show up near bodies of water, while angular geometric forms favored urban environments with lots of metal and concrete. The eye-like symbol appeared everywhere, always watching, always centered in whatever arrangement of markings surrounded it. I started a digital archive, scanning every photograph and organizing them by symbol type, location, and date. The database grew rapidly, and patterns emerged that suggested a kind of spatial syntax. The symbols weren't random. They were organized according to rules I was beginning to understand intuitively, even if I couldn't articulate them logically. But it was the temporal aspect that disturbed me most. When I compared photographs taken at different times, I could see the symbols evolving, responding to my increasing attention and understanding. It was as if my act of observation was causing them to become more complex, more communicative, more present in the physical world. 3 weeks after my meeting with Dr. Chen, I woke up to find symbols scratched into the frost on my bedroom window. Not photographed symbols, not documented evidence, but actual markings that I could touch with my finger, that left traces of moisture on my skin. I photographed the window, of course. But when I developed the film, the image showed not just the scratched symbols, but additional markings that hadn't been visible to my naked eye. The photograph contained more information than reality itself, as if the camera was accessing layers of meaning that existed beyond normal perception. That's when I called Dr. Chen. "It's accelerating," I told her. "The symbols are appearing in the physical world now, not just in photographs." "Yes," she said simply. "That's the next stage." The phenomenon is establishing a more direct interface with your consciousness. The photography was just the initial contact protocol. Contact protocol for what? For whatever exists in the spaces between dimensions, between states of being. The symbols are like a handshake, a way of establishing communication between different types of consciousness. Once the handshake is complete, more direct forms of contact become possible. I looked at the frost symbols on my window, already beginning to melt in the morning sun. What happens next? That depends on you. You can try to break the connection, stop photographing, destroy the images, pretend this never happened. Some people have managed it, though they're never quite the same afterward. Or you can embrace it. Learn to communicate with whatever intelligence is reaching across dimensional boundaries to make contact. The choice felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind me lay the familiar world of darkrooms and f-stops, of objective reality and documented evidence. Ahead lay something vast and unknowable, a form of communication that transcended normal human experience. I touched the melting symbols on the window one more time, feeling their meaning flow through my fingertips like electricity. The tingling sensation had spread throughout my body now, as if I were becoming a conduit for something larger than myself. Dokuchen, I said into the phone. I think I want to learn their language. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a mixture of excitement and concern that I would come to recognize as the standard response to crossing that particular threshold. Then we have a lot of work to do. And I should warn you, once you start speaking with them directly, the photographs become just the beginning. Reality itself becomes negotiable. I hung up the phone and looked around my apartment. Every reflective surface now showed faint traces of symbols. Not clearly, but definitely present if you knew how to look. The language was spreading, establishing itself in the visual vocabulary of my daily existence. I loaded a fresh roll of film into my camera and headed for the door. There was a conversation waiting to unfold, written in symbols that existed between the visible and invisible, between what was and what could be. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was about to become fluent in something that mattered. Story 2. It started with Sarah's post in the local community forum at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Did anyone else dream about the red door last night? Tall, wooden with brass hinges. Behind it was a room full of mirrors, and someone was calling my name from the other side of each reflection. I almost scrolled past it. But something about the description made my fingers pause on my phone screen. I'd been lying awake for the better part of an hour, unable to shake the lingering sensation of a dream that had felt more real than most of my waking hours. A dream about a red door, wooden and weathered, with brass hinges that creaked when I pushed it open. Behind that door had been a circular room lined with mirrors of different sizes and ages. Some were ornate Victorian pieces with gilded frames. Others were simple bathroom mirrors that reflected harsh fluorescent light. In each reflection, I'd seen not myself, but other people, strangers who seemed to be looking directly at me, their mouths moving as if they were trying to speak across an impossible distance. I typed a response before I could reconsider. I dreamed about the same door. The mirrors showed other people, and they all seemed to know I was there. Did you hear voices calling your name? Sarah's reply came within minutes, yes! But not just my name. They were calling other names too. Names I didn't recognize, like they were trying to get the attention of multiple people at once. Over the next hour, 6 more people responded to the thread. All of them had experienced the same dream, down to remarkably specific details. The sound the brass hinges made when the door opened, the musty smell of the mirror room, the way the reflected strangers had pressed their hands against the glass as if trying to break through into our shared space. This is impossible, someone named Marcus wrote. 7 people don't have the same dream by coincidence. What's happening to us? That question would haunt me for weeks to come. I'd always been a vivid dreamer, but my dreams had been private experiences, landscapes, and narratives generated by my own subconscious, populated by people from my memory and imagination. The idea that I might be sharing dream space with strangers felt both thrilling and deeply unsettling. The next night, I went to sleep with deliberate intention. I wanted to return to the room of mirrors, to understand what had brought 7 strangers together in the same impossible space. As I drifted off, I focused on the image of the red door. visualizing every detail I could remember. I found myself standing in a long hallway lined with doors of different colors and materials. Red, blue, green, black, white, dozens of them stretching away into darkness. I approached the red door I remembered from the previous night and pressed my ear against its surface. Inside, I could hear voices murmuring, the sound of footsteps on wooden floors, and something that might have been laughter or crying. When I pushed the door open, I wasn't alone in the mirror room. Sarah was there, recognizable from her profile picture on the forum, standing in front of a tall mirror that reflected not her image, but that of an elderly man in a suit. She turned when she heard me enter, and her face showed the same mixture of wonder and fear that I felt. "You're real," she whispered, though her voice seemed to come from very far away, despite her standing only a few feet from me. "I mean, you're really here." "I think so," I replied, though I wasn't certain what air meant in this context. The room felt solid enough. I could hear the sound of my footsteps on the wooden floor, feel the cool air against my skin. But there was a quality to the experience that marked it as unmistakably dreamlike, a fluidity at the edges of perception that reminded me this wasn't ordinary waking reality. Other people began arriving as we stood there talking. Marcus appeared first, followed by a woman named Jennifer, who hadn't posted in the forum, but somehow knew about the shared dream. Then came David, Lisa, and Thomas, all strangers to each other in waking life, all drawn to this impossible meeting place by forces we didn't understand. "The mirrors are different tonight," Sarah observed, and she was right. Instead of showing us strangers, the reflective surfaces now displayed scenes from our daily lives. My bathroom mirror showed my actual bathroom at home, where I could see my physical body lying asleep in bed. Jennifer's mirror displayed her kitchen, where a coffee maker was automatically brewing the morning pot she'd programmed before sleep. "We're seeing through the mirrors," David said, his voice filled with a mixture of scientific curiosity and existential dread, "into our real lives, from inside the dream." That's when I noticed the newcomer standing in a corner of the room I hadn't explored yet. An older woman, perhaps in her 60s, with silver hair and eyes that held the kind of depth that comes from experiencing more than one lifetime's worth of unusual events. "You're all learning," she said, though she hadn't been part of our forum discussion. "Learning to navigate the shared spaces between individual consciousness." "Who are you?" Marcus asked. "How do you know about this?" "I'm Alina. I've been visiting this room for 37 years, ever since I first dreamed of the red door as a young woman. I've watched hundreds of people discover this place, form connections, and eventually move on to other shared spaces." She gestured around the room, and I noticed for the first time that there were more mirrors than I'd initially counted. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, extending up the walls into shadows that seemed to stretch impossibly high. Each mirror connects to a different dreamer, Elena explained. People who've learned to find this place, to step outside the boundaries of their individual dream experience. But the mirrors are just the beginning. "The beginning of what?" Sarah asked. "Shared consciousness, collective dreaming, the realization that the boundaries between individual minds are more porous than we've been taught to believe." Over the following weeks, our forum grew. Word spread through careful sharing, never too public, never too explicit, but enough to reach people who'd experienced similar phenomena. The thread expanded to include dozens of accounts from people who'd found their way to the mirror room, or to similar shared dream spaces accessed through different colored doors. The blue door led to an infinite library where dreamers could access books that didn't exist in waking reality, volumes containing knowledge that seemed to come from collective human experience rather than individual imagination. The green door opened onto a vast garden where plants grew in patterns that reflected the emotional states of the dreamers present, creating a living landscape of shared feelings. The black door was more troubling. Those who entered reported finding themselves in spaces that reflected not just individual dreams, but collective nightmares. War zones from history, natural disasters, all the accumulated trauma of human experience made manifest in shared dream space. It's not just pleasant experiences that can be shared. Alina warned during one of our group meetings in the mirror room. Consciousness is a spectrum, and shared dreaming gives access to all parts of that spectrum, including the parts we'd rather not explore. I began keeping a dream journal, documenting not just my own experiences, but the accounts shared by others in our growing community. Patterns emerged that defied conventional understanding of how dreams and consciousness worked. People who'd never met in person were having conversations in shared dream space that continued across multiple nights. Dreamers were accessing information they couldn't have known in waking life. Historical events, scientific concepts, artistic techniques, as if the shared space provided access to a collective knowledge base. Most disturbing were the incidents of precognitive, shared dreaming. Dreamers would experience events together in the shared spaces that would later occur, in modified form, in waking reality. A group dream about a car accident preceded an actual collision by 3 days. Shared visions of weather patterns proved to be accurate predictions of atmospheric conditions. It's as if the shared dream space exists partially outside normal time. I wrote in my journal, past, present, and future seemed to be accessible simultaneously, though the information often comes through in symbolic or metaphorical forms that require interpretation. The scientific part of my mind struggled with these experiences. Shared dreaming shouldn't be possible, according to everything I'd learned about neuroscience and consciousness. Dreams were supposed to be private experiences, generated by individual brains processing memory and emotion during sleep. But the evidence was undeniable. Night after night, multiple people were accessing the same impossible spaces, having conversations, sharing experiences, and bringing back information that could be verified in waking life. Dr. Elizabeth Murphy, a researcher in consciousness studies at the local university, eventually joined our group after hearing about our experiences through academic networks. She approached the phenomenon with scientific skepticism, but also with the openness that marked her as a serious researcher rather than a debunker. There are theoretical frameworks that could accommodate shared dreaming, she told us during one of our waking world meetings at a coffee shop downtown. Quantum theories of consciousness suggest that individual minds might be more interconnected than we realize. If consciousness exists partially outside the physical brain, which is still a matter of intense scientific debate, then shared conscious experiences become theoretically possible. She began studying our group, documenting our experiences, and looking for patterns that might provide clues about how shared dreaming worked. What she discovered was both fascinating and unsettling. Your brain activity during shared dream episodes shows patterns that don't match normal REM sleep. She reported after we'd participated in several sleep studies. There's increased activity in areas associated with social cognition and empathy, as if your brains are working overtime to maintain connections with other minds. More troubling was her discovery that our waking consciousness was changing as well. Regular participants in shared dreaming showed increased sensitivity to what she termed non-local awareness, the ability to perceive information that wasn't directly available through normal sensory channels. It's as if learning to share dream space is teaching your minds to operate in a more connected mode, even during waking hours, she explained. You're becoming more telepathically sensitive, more aware of the emotional and mental states of people around you. I'd noticed this myself. Conversations with coworkers often felt like I knew what they were going to say before they said it. Emotional atmospheres in rooms became palpable, almost visible. The boundaries between my thoughts and feelings and those of people around me seemed to be dissolving. Is that dangerous? Sarah asked during one of our group sessions. I don't know, Dr. Murphy admitted. This is uncharted territory. We're documenting a phenomenon that challenges fundamental assumptions about consciousness and identity. The long-term effects are impossible to predict. That's when Elena shared something she'd been keeping to herself for months. There are others, she said quietly. Groups like ours all around the world. We're not the first to discover shared dreaming, and we won't be the last. But there's something happening on a larger scale, something that suggests this phenomenon is spreading. She'd been in contact with researchers and experiencers in other countries, all documenting similar increases in shared dream experiences. The internet had made it easier for people to find each other and recognize that their experiences weren't unique. But the underlying phenomenon seemed to be growing more common, regardless of digital connectivity. It's as if human consciousness is evolving, Elena continued, becoming more interconnected, more capable of shared experience. The question is whether this is a natural development or whether something is catalyzing the change. That night, I found myself in the mirror room with a larger group than usual. Faces I recognized from weeks of shared dreaming, but also newcomers who'd somehow found their way to our space without any forum posts or invitations. The room itself seemed to be expanding to accommodate the growing number of dreamers, its walls stretching further into shadow, filled distances. The mirrors now showed not just scenes from our individual lives, but connections between us, threads of light that linked dreamer to dreamer, creating a visible network of shared consciousness. I could see how my own thoughts and experiences influenced others in the group, and how their minds affected mine in return. We're becoming something new, someone said, though I couldn't identify the speaker in the crowd of dreamers. Not just individuals sharing experiences, but a collective entity with distributed consciousness. The idea should have been terrifying, but in the shared space, it felt natural, inevitable. The boundaries of individual identity that seemed so important in waking life felt arbitrary and limiting here. We were learning to exist as both individuals and as part of something larger. When I woke up, I found a message on the forum from someone I'd never met. I dreamed I was in a room full of mirrors with all of you. I've never posted here before. Never heard of shared dreaming, but somehow I knew where to find you online. How is that possible? And the answer, I realized, was that the shared dreaming wasn't just allowing us to meet in impossible spaces. It was teaching us to remain connected, even when we weren't asleep, creating a network of consciousness that persisted across different states of being. I looked out my bedroom window at the pre-dawn darkness, wondering how many other people around the world were waking up with memories of shared dreams, with new connections forming in their minds. With the gradual realization that consciousness was far more fluid and interconnected than they'd ever imagined, the red door had been just the beginning. Behind it lay not just a room of mirrors, but a fundamental shift in what it meant to be human, to be individual, to be awake or asleep, or something entirely new that existed in the spaces between all these familiar states of being. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of brass hinges creaking as more doors opened. More dreamers stepped through, and the network of shared consciousness continued to grow, one impossible dream at a time. Story 3. The phone was nothing special. A worn Samsung Galaxy with a cracked screen and a case that had seen better days. The pawn shop owner had almost apologized for its condition as he handed it over. Still works fine, he assured me, wiping dust from the screen with his sleeve. Battery holds a charge, camera's decent. Previous owner took good care of it, electronics wise. Just, well, you can see the cosmetic damage. I needed a phone, and my budget was tight. $5 seemed reasonable for something that would let me make calls and check email until I could afford better. The crack in the screen ran diagonally from corner to corner, but the display was still readable. I paid the man, got it unlocked by his tech guy, and walked out with my new, or rather used, connection to the world. That first evening, I sat in my apartment running through the setup process. The phone had been factory reset, or so I assumed, but I noticed it still had some residual data. A few photos lingered in the gallery, scenic shots of a lake, a sunrise through trees, a small dog sleeping on a couch. Nothing personal. Just the kind of mundane images everyone takes, but never deletes. The background wallpaper was a photograph of stars against a deep purple sky. Beautiful, but not my style. I changed it to something generic, cleared the remaining photos, and began the tedious process of reinstalling my apps and transferring contacts. It was around midnight when the first message arrived. The notification chime was soft, a gentle ping that barely registered over the sound of my television. I glanced at the phone absently, expecting spam or a marketing text. Instead, I saw a message from a number I didn't recognize, a local area code, but not one in my contacts. Can't sleep again. The stars are beautiful tonight, though. Are you seeing them too? I stared at the screen, reading the words several times. Wrong number, obviously. Someone trying to reach a friend or lover, sending their restless thoughts into the digital ether. I started to type a response. Wrong number, sorry, but hesitated. there was something about the message, a loneliness that resonated with my own midnight wakefulness. Instead, I deleted my draft and set the phone aside. Let them discover the mistake on their own. But sleep eluded me that night, and I found myself checking the phone repeatedly, wondering if another message would come. None did. The screen remained dark, except for the gentle glow of the clock, counting away the hours until dawn. The next evening brought another message from the same number, arriving at 11:43 p.m. Had that dream again. The one where I'm walking through water that never gets deeper, never gets shallower, just walking forever with the feeling that I'm late for something important. Do you think dreams mean anything? This time, I almost responded immediately. The vivid description stirred something in me. I'd had similar dreams, that sensation of being perpetually delayed, perpetually searching for something just out of reach. But again, I stopped myself. This wasn't meant for me. Somewhere, someone was missing these messages, wondering why their friend had gone silent. I considered calling the number, explaining that they had the wrong person. But it was nearly midnight, and something about the messages suggested their sender was in a fragile state of mind. A stranger's voice might be more disturbing than helpful. The messages continued for the next several days, always arriving late at night, always carrying that same tone of gentle melancholy. Saw a cardinal today sitting on Mom's fence, bright red against the white snow. Made me think about how color can surprise you, even in the middle of winter. The coffee shop on Main Street closed down. Remember how we used to sit by the window and watch people hurry past. Everything changes, but I guess that's supposed to be okay. Found an old letter you wrote me in the drawer today. Your handwriting was always so much neater than mine. I kept thinking I should write you back, but what would I say? Each message drew me deeper into this stranger's world. I began to look forward to them, checking my phone as evening approached with an anticipation I couldn't quite explain. The messages painted a picture of someone dealing with loss, someone whose life had been disrupted by absence. Then came the message that changed everything. I know this sounds crazy, but I think I'm dead. I sat up in bed, fully awake now, my heart beginning a rapid rhythm. The words glowed on the cracked screen, like a confession whispered in the dark. I've been thinking about it for days now. The way people look through me. The way my calls go straight to voicemail. The way you never respond to these messages, even though I know you always used to text me back right away. I think something happened, and I can't remember what. My hands shook as I read and reread the text. This wasn't the rambling of someone having a breakdown. There was a clarity to it that was somehow more disturbing than confusion would have been. I finally typed a response. Who do you think you're texting? The reply came immediately, as if they had been waiting by their phone. Jenny. I'm texting Jenny. This is her number. She gave it to me when we started dating 3 years ago, and I've never deleted it. Even after everything. I'm not Jenny, I wrote back. I just got this phone a week ago. You have the wrong number. A long pause. Then, that's not possible. I know this number by heart. I was about to explain about phone number reassignment, about how carriers recycled old numbers, but something stopped me. Instead, I asked, "What's your name?" Michael Chen. I live at 1247 Elm Street. Apartment 3B. I work at Patterson and Associates downtown. Or I used to work there. I'm not sure anymore. Things have been confusing lately. The address was only 6 blocks from my apartment. Without quite understanding why, I found myself getting dressed. It was past midnight, but I needed to know. I needed to understand what was happening. Elm Street was quiet, lined with older apartment buildings converted from Victorian houses. Number 1247 was a gray 3-story structure with a small front yard overgrown with untended bushes. The windows of apartment 3B were dark. I stood on the sidewalk, feeling foolish but unable to leave. My phone buzzed. "Are you there, Jenny? I keep texting, but you never answer when I call. I tried calling earlier, but it just rings and rings." I looked up at the dark windows again, then typed. "I'm outside your building. Rayleigh." I'm looking out the window, but I don't see anyone. "Are you sure you have the right address?" A chill ran down my spine. I was standing directly under a streetlight, clearly visible to anyone looking down from the 3rd floor. But the windows remained dark, empty. "Wave if you can see me," I texted. "I'm waving right now." "Both hands over my head? Can you see me?" The windows stayed dark and still. I walked home slowly, my mind churning with possibilities. Mental illness, elaborate prank, some kind of technical glitch. All seemed more plausible than the alternative my subconscious was suggesting. The next morning, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I looked up Michael Chen online. The obituary was in the local newspaper, dated 2 weeks ago. Michael Chen, 28, died unexpectedly on February 14th. A graduate of State University, an employee of Patterson and Associates. Michael was known for his kind heart and love of photography. He is survived by his parents, David and Linda Chen, and his girlfriend, Jennifer Morrison. Services will be held. Jennifer, Jenny. My hands trembled as I continued reading. The article mentioned that Michael had been an avid stargazer and nature photographer. It described his quiet personality and his dedication to his work. But it didn't explain how he had died, only that it was unexpected. I found Jennifer Morrison's social media profiles easily enough. The photos told a story of loss and bewilderment. Recent posts showed her surrounded by friends at a memorial service, her eyes red, rimmed and distant. Earlier posts revealed her relationship with Michael. Hiking trips, restaurant dates, cozy evenings watching movies. They looked happy together, the kind of couple that made other people believe in love. Her most recent post was from 3 days ago. Changed my phone number. Too many painful memories attached to the old one. Starting fresh. The pieces fell into place with a clarity that made my stomach turn. Jenny had changed her number. The phone company had reassigned it. And somehow Michael, dead Michael, was still trying to reach her. That evening, I waited for his message. It came at 11:52. I went to our place today, the bench by the lake where we had our first picnic. I sat there for hours waiting for you to show up. I know you said you needed space, but I can't understand why you won't talk to me. Did I do something wrong? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Michael, I need to tell you something. This isn't Jenny's number anymore. But this is the only number I have for her. The only way I can reach her. She changed her number after you died. The silence stretched for nearly an hour. Then, that word keeps coming up. Died, but I don't feel dead. I feel like I'm waiting for something to happen, for someone to explain what's going on. What's the last thing you remember clearly? I asked. Valentine's Day. I was driving to Jenny's apartment with flowers. Roses and those little white ones she likes. Baby's breath. I was going to cook dinner for her. I remember being excited, nervous. I had something important to ask her. A pause. Then everything gets fuzzy, like trying to remember a dream. I closed my eyes, imagining that last drive, the anticipation, the flowers on the passenger seat. Michael. The accident wasn't your fault. Accident. I didn't know the details, but I could guess. Valentine's Day, flowers in the car. A young man in love hurrying to his girlfriend's apartment. The statistics painted the picture clearly enough. You died in a car accident on February 14th, 2 weeks ago. This time the silence lasted until nearly 2 a.m. Then, but I'm still here. I'm still thinking, still feeling. How can I be dead if I'm still here? It was a question I couldn't answer. A mystery that challenged everything I thought I understood about existence. But over the following nights, as Michael's messages continued, I began to develop a theory. Maybe. I texted him one night. You're not gone because you still have something unfinished. Something you need to say or do. The question, he replied immediately. I was going to ask Jenny to marry me. I had the ring and everything. It's probably still in my car. The image was heartbreaking. A proposal that would never happen. A future that had been cut short by time and circumstance. But there was something else. Something that made me continue this impossible conversation night after night. She needs to know. Michael typed. She needs to know how much I loved her, how much she meant to me. Do you think, could you tell her? I don't know her, Michael. I'm just a stranger who happened to get your number. But you're the only one who can hear me. The only one who knows I'm still here. The weight of that responsibility settled over me like a heavy blanket. I was the bridge between the living and whatever Michael had become. The only witness to his continued existence in the spaces between reality and dream. I found Jennifer's address through public records. A skill I wasn't proud of possessing, but had acquired during a brief stint working for a private investigator. She lived in a small house on the other side of town. The kind of place a young professional might rent while saving money for something better. I drove there on a Saturday afternoon, rehearsing what I would say. How do you explain to a grieving woman that her dead boyfriend has been sending text messages? How do you prove something that sounds like the product of a troubled mind? She answered the door in paint, stained clothes, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Even in casual disarray, I could see why Michael had loved her. She had the kind of natural beauty that came from genuine warmth, though that warmth was currently clouded by recent grief. I'm sorry to bother you, I began, feeling like a fool. This is going to sound strange, but I've been receiving text messages meant for you, from Michael. Her expression shifted from polite confusion to something sharper, more guarded. Michael is dead. Someone's playing a very cruel joke. I know how it sounds, but I have his messages here, and they contain things. Details that a stranger wouldn't know. I showed her my phone, scrolling through weeks of conversations. He talks about your first picnic, about a cardinal on your mother's fence, about dreams where he's walking through water. She stared at the screen, her face growing pale. Michael never told anyone about those dreams. They were something he only shared with me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. How could you know about that? Because he told me. In these messages, he thinks I'm you. We sat in her living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes. She was moving, she explained, trying to escape the memories that seemed to follow her everywhere. I showed her more messages, watched her face crumble with each familiar detail, each intimate memory that no imposter could have fabricated. Eyes, is he okay? She asked finally, the question breaking her voice. I mean, wherever he is he in pain? He seems confused more than anything. Lost, but not in pain. I hesitated, then continued. He was going to ask you to marry him. He had a ring. She broke down then, tears streaming down her face as she nodded. I knew. I hoped. We had talked about it, about our future. He was so excited about something that last day, so secretive. She wiped her eyes with a paint-stained sleeve. I found the receipt in his things. His parents let me go through his apartment. The ring was still in his car when they cleaned it out. When we talked for hours, sharing memories of a man neither of us would see again. She told me about his photography hobby, his terrible cooking, his habit of texting her pictures of interesting clouds. In return, I shared his messages with her, letting her see how he was still thinking of her, still loving her, even in whatever state he now existed in. What does he want? She asked as evening approached. To know that you're okay. To tell you how much he loved you. To say goodbye. I think. That night, I crafted a message carefully, choosing words that would carry Jennifer's voices. Michael, it's me. It's Jenny. I got your messages. The response came immediately, Jenny. Is it really you? I've been trying to reach you for so long. I know. I'm here now. I have so much to tell you, so much I need to say. But first, are you okay? Are you taking care of yourself? Jennifer was reading over my shoulder, tears streaming down her face as I typed her responses. Through me, they had their final conversation. About love, about regret, about the future they would never share. Michael told her about the ring, about his plans for their life together. Jennifer told him about her grief, about how much she missed him, about how she was learning to live with the hole his absence had left in her world. I don't understand what's happening to me, Michael typed. Why I'm still here, why I can still think and feel. But I'm glad I got to talk to you one more time. I love you. Jennifer typed through my hands. I will always love you. I love you too, more than all the stars we used to watch together. Then something strange happened. The phone grew warm in my hands, almost hot, and the screen flickered with light that seemed to come from within the device itself. For a moment, I could swear I felt something else present in the room. A warmth, a sense of completion, of a circle finally closing. The phone screen went black, then rebooted itself. When it came back up, all of Michael's messages were gone. The conversation history was empty, as if our weeks of communication had never happened. Jennifer and I sat in silence, staring at the blank screen. Neither of us spoke about what we had felt in that final moment. The sense of a presence departing, of someone finally finding their way home. In the days that followed, no new messages came from Michael's number. When I tried calling it, I reached a confused teenager who had just gotten the phone as a birthday present. Michael Chen, whatever had been keeping him tethered to our world through digital signals and electronic dreams, was finally truly gone. But sometimes, late at night when I'm having trouble sleeping, I find myself looking at the stars and thinking about the mystery of consciousness, about love that transcends death, about messages that find their way across impossible distances. And sometimes, just sometimes, I could swear I hear the soft chime of a text message that never appears on my screen. A gentle reminder that some connections are stronger than the boundaries between worlds. The phone still works perfectly, despite its cracked screen and worn case. But I think I'll always associate it with those strange weeks when I became an accidental messenger between life and whatever comes after. It taught me that love doesn't end with last breaths, that some conversations continue long after voices fall silent, and that sometimes the most important messages are the ones we never expected to receive. Story 4. The neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting pink and blue shadows across the empty parking lot. Mel's Diner, open 24 hours. It proclaimed in letters that had seen better decades. I pulled my car into a space near the entrance, grateful to see light and the promise of coffee after 3 hours of driving through rural highways that seemed to stretch into infinity. It was 2:47 a.m. according to my dashboard clock, and I was still 2 hours from home. The conference had run late. Dinner with colleagues had stretched longer than expected, and now I was paying the price with bloodshot eyes and the kind of bone, deep exhaustion that made highway lines blur together like broken promises. The diner looked like it had been transplanted from the 1950s and left to age gracefully in the amber glow of fluorescent lights. Red vinyl booths lined the windows, their surfaces cracked but clean. A long counter stretched along the back wall, complete with chrome stools that rotated with a gentle squeak. Behind the counter, a middle-aged waitress with graying hair, pulled into a neat bun, looked up from her magazine and smiled. "Welcome to Mel's, honey. Sit anywhere you like." I chose a booth near the window where I could keep an eye on my car and ordered coffee. Black, strong, and as fresh as possible. The waitress, whose name tag read Dorothy, brought it in a heavy ceramic mug, along with a small pitcher of cream and a bowl of sugar packets. "Rough night?" she asked, her voice carrying the kind of maternal concern that only experienced waitresses seem to master. "Long drive. Still got a ways to go." "Well, you just take your time. We're not going anywhere." As she returned to her station behind the counter, I noticed the other customers for the first time. 3 people sat scattered around the diner, each occupying their own island of solitude under the harsh but comforting light. In the booth closest to the kitchen sat a man in his 50s, wearing a rumpled business suit that suggested he'd been traveling even longer than I had. His tie was loosened, his shirt sleeves rolled up, and before him sat a plate containing what appeared to be meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans, the kind of comfort food that promised to fill the hollow spaces that late night travel carved into a person's soul. At the counter, a woman with platinum blonde hair teased high in a style from decades past nursed a cup of coffee and picked at a slice of apple pie. She wore a waitress uniform, but not one that matched Dorothy's. This one was powder blue with white trim, and it looked like it belonged in a different establishment entirely. Her red lipstick was perfectly applied despite the late hour, and she stared out the window with the kind of distant expression that suggested she was seeing something far beyond the parking lot. The third customer sat in the back corner booth, partially obscured by shadows. I could make out the silhouette of someone small, a teenager, perhaps, or a young woman, hunched over what looked like a bowl of soup. The steam rose from it in slow, hypnotic spirals that caught the light and seemed to hang in the air longer than steam should. I sipped my coffee and felt some of the road tension begin to dissolve. The diner had that timeless quality that all good late night establishments possessed, a sense that it existed outside the normal flow of hours and minutes, a pocket of warmth and light in the endless dark of the highway night. First time at Mel's. Dorothy asked, refilling my cup without being asked. Yeah, I didn't even know this place existed until I saw the sign. Oh, we've been here a long time. Longer than most folks realize. She glanced around the diner with something that might have been pride, or might have been resignation. Gets all kinds of travelers through here. People going places, people running from places. Sometimes people who aren't quite sure which they're doing. I followed her gaze to the other customers. The businessman was cutting his meatloaf with mechanical precision, chewing slowly, his eyes fixed on some invisible point beyond the kitchen doors. The blonde woman had taken another small bite of pie, but the slice looked exactly the same size as when I'd first noticed it. And the figure in the back booth remained motionless, except for the occasional lifting of a spoon that seemed to move in slow motion. "Do you get many customers this late?" I asked. "Oh, these 3 come in every night. Same time, same orders. Regulars, you know." Dorothy's smile flickered slightly. Though I guess regular's not quite the right word. Something in her tone made me look more carefully at the other patrons. The businessman's plate should have been half empty by now, given how steadily he'd been eating, but it looked untouched. The woman's pie remained a perfect triangular slice, despite her nibbling. And the figure in the corner booth. I realized I hadn't actually seen them take a single spoonful of soup, despite the constant motion of their hand. "How long have they been coming here?" I asked. Dorothy considered the question, her eyes taking on a faraway look. "Hard to say exactly. Time gets a bit fluid in a place like this. Night shift does that to you. But I'd say," she paused, counting on her fingers, "Harold there, the gentleman with the meatloaf, he's been coming for maybe 15 years. Always orders the same thing. Always sits in that same booth. Says he's traveling to see his daughter, but somehow he never quite makes it there." My coffee had gone lukewarm, but I found myself reluctant to drink it. Something about Dorothy's casual tone as she described impossible behavior was making my skin prickle with unease. And the woman at the counter. "That's Vivian. She used to work at a diner about 50 miles south of here. Place burned down in..." Dorothy frowned, as if trying to recall a date from a calendar that kept changing. "Well, long time ago. She comes here still wearing her old uniform. Says she's waiting for her shift to start, but..." She shrugged. "Well, there's only one waitress position here, and that's mine." The blonde woman, Vivian, turned at the sound of her name, and I got my first clear look at her face. She was beautiful in the way that old Hollywood starlets were beautiful, with perfect bone structure and flawless makeup. But there was something wrong with her eyes. They held a depth of confusion that made my heart ache. She smiled at me, a dazzling expression that didn't quite reach those troubled eyes. "New face," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. "Don't get many of those anymore." She gestured to the empty stool beside her. "Come sit with me, honey." Gets lonely at the counter. I found myself standing before I'd consciously decided to move, drawn by something in her voice that spoke of profound isolation. As I settled onto the stool next to her, I caught the scent of her perfume, something floral and old-fashioned that reminded me of my grandmother's jewelry box. "What's your story, stranger?" Vivian asked, cutting another precise bite of pie that somehow failed to diminish the slice. "You running to something or away from something?" "Just heading home?" I said, though even as I spoke the words, I couldn't quite remember where home was. The conference, the colleagues, the reason for my late night drive. It all seemed distant now, like memories from someone else's life. Home. She tasted the word like it was foreign. I had one of those once. Little apartment above the diner where I worked. Pink curtains in the bedroom window, and a cat named Fitzgerald. Funny how you forget details until something reminds you. She took another bite of pie that changed nothing. "Do you think home is a place or a feeling?" Before I could answer, Harold spoke up from his booth. "It's a place you can never quite reach," he said, without looking up from his methodical cutting and chewing. "Always just a little further down the road than you expected." His voice had the quality of someone speaking from the bottom of a well, distant and echoing, as if it had to travel through years of accumulated silence to reach us. "Now, Harold," Dorothy called from behind the counter. "Don't be filling our new friend's head with your philosophy. Some folks still believe in happy endings." "Do they?" Harold asked, finally looking up. His eyes were gray and tired, holding the weight of countless disappointed arrivals. How refreshing that must be. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. There was something deeply wrong about this entire scene, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. The longer I sat there, the more details I noticed that didn't quite make sense. The clock on the wall read 3:15, but I could have sworn it had been the same time when I'd first looked at it 20 minutes ago. The coffee in my cup never seemed to get any cooler, no matter how long I left it untouched. And the other customers, Harold, Vivian, and the shadowy figure in the corner, moved with a strange, repetitive quality, like actors performing the same scene over and over. "What about her?" I asked Dorothy, nodding toward the corner booth. "What's her story?" Dorothy's expression grew sad. "That's Lucy. She's been here the longest, since before I started working here, and I've been here." She paused, looking genuinely confused. I'm not exactly sure how long I've been here. But Lucy, she's just a kid, maybe 16, 17, orders tomato soup and crackers every night. Says she's waiting for her boyfriend to pick her up from school." "What school?" "The high school up the road. Except," Dorothy's voice dropped to a whisper, "the high school burned down in 1987. Same fire that took the old diner where Vivian used to work. Funny how things connect, isn't it?" The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't want to see. "Dorothy, what year do you think it is?" She blinked at me, her friendly expression faltering for just a moment. "Why, it's... She looked around the diner, as if searching for clues, her gaze lingering on the calendar behind the register. But from where I sat, I could see that the calendar was blank, just an empty grid with no numbers, no month, no year. "It's night," she said finally, her voice taking on a defensive quality. "It's always night here. That's when people need a place like this most." I stood up abruptly, my stool squeaking against the floor. The sound seemed to echo longer than it should have, bouncing off the walls and ceiling like a stone thrown into a deep well. All three customers turned to look at me with expressions of mild interest, as if I were performing a scene they'd seen countless times before. "I need to go," I said, reaching for my wallet. "How much do I owe you?" "Oh, honey, don't worry about that," Dorothy said, waving away my money. "Coffee's on the house for first-time visitors. Besides, you haven't finished your cup." I looked down at the mug I'd been drinking from. It was full to the brim, as if I'd never touched it. "I really need to get going." "I have a long drive ahead of me, do you?" Vivian asked, swiveling on her stool to face me fully. "Where exactly are you going?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't remember. The conference, my home, the reason for my journey. It all felt like a story I'd heard once, but couldn't quite recall the ending to. I struggled to form words, to grasp at memories that seemed to slip away the moment I tried to focus on them. I was driving somewhere. I stopped for coffee. "That's what they all say at first," Harold observed, still cutting his eternal meatloaf. But after a while, you realize that the journey was never about the destination. It was about the stopping, about finding a place where you could rest. "You're tired," Dorothy said gently, and I realized she was right. I was exhausted in a way that went deeper than a long drive, deeper than a late night. It was the kind of tiredness that accumulated over years, over decades, over lifetimes. "Why don't you sit back down?" Vivian patted the stool beside her. "Have some pie. The apple is really very good, and you look like you could use the sugar." Against my better judgment, I found myself sitting down again. Dorothy slid a plate across the counter. Apple pie just like Vivian's, with a perfect triangular slice and a small scoop of vanilla ice cream that wasn't melting despite the warm air of the diner. I took a bite, and the taste was everything childhood had promised pie should be. Sweet and tart, and comforting in a way that made my chest tight with unnamed longing. But when I looked down at the plate, the slice was still whole, still perfect, as if I'd never touched it. "How long have you been here, Dorothy?" I asked. She wiped down the counter with a dish towel, her movements automatic and soothing. "Long enough to know that some places exist outside of time, outside of the normal rules. Long enough to understand that sometimes people need a rest stop that doesn't appear on any map." "Are we dead?" The question came out of me before I could stop it, stark and simple in the warm air of the diner. The silence that followed was profound. Even the humming of the fluorescent lights seemed to quiet, as if the entire diner was holding its breath. Finally, Lucy spoke from her corner booth. Her voice was young and sweet, with just a hint of the accent that marked her as a local. "Dead is such a harsh word," she said. "I prefer to think we're waiting." "Waiting for what?" I asked. "For whatever comes next," Harold answered, though I'm beginning to suspect that this is what comes next. This moment, stretching out forever. This warm place with good coffee and familiar faces. But surely someone must be looking for us, I protested. Family, friends, employers. Surely someone would notice if we just disappeared. Vivian laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, honey, time works differently for the living. For them, we've been gone for years, decades in some cases. They've moved on, had their memorial services, inherited our belongings. The world keeps turning even when we're not there to see it." The truth of it settled over me like a heavy blanket. Fragments of memory began to surface. A conference that ran late, a decision to drive through the night instead of staying in a hotel. Rain beginning to fall as I pushed through fatigue and mounting exhaustion. The deer that appeared in my headlights like a ghost made flesh. The violent spin of the world as my car left the road. "The accident," I whispered. "There's always an accident," Dorothy said softly. "Or an illness. Or just the simple wearing down that comes with a life fully lived. The how doesn't matter so much as the fact that you're here now." I looked around the diner with new eyes, seeing it clearly for the first time. It wasn't just a rest stop. It was a way station, a place between worlds where souls could gather and process the enormity of their transition. The endless night outside wasn't the darkness before dawn. It was the gentle twilight of existence itself. So what happens now? I asked. "No, we wait," Harold said. "We eat our favorite foods and drink good coffee and remember what it felt like to be alive. And someday, when we're ready, we'll leave. Walk out that door and into whatever comes after the after. How will we know when we're ready?" "You'll know," Lucy said. "It's different for everyone. Some people need to work through unfinished business. Others just need time to say goodbye to themselves. But eventually, everyone finds their moment." I looked at Vivian's untouched pie, at Harold's perpetual meatloaf, at Lucy's steaming soup that never cooled. And until then, we have each other, Dorothy said. We have stories to share and time to process, and the comfort of knowing we're not alone in this transition. It's not such a bad place to spend eternity, is it? I took another bite of pie that didn't diminish and found that she was right. The diner was warm and welcoming, filled with the kind of gentle melancholy that made solitude bearable. Outside, the neon sign continued its eternal buzz and flicker, a beacon for other travelers who would need a place to rest, to understand, to begin the slow process of letting go. "Will there be others?" I asked. "Oh, yes," Dorothy smiled. "There are always others. Souls get tired, honey. They need places like this, even if they don't know it, when they first walk through that door. We'll take care of them, just like we're taking care of each other." I settled back on my stool and raised my coffee cup in a small toast. To Mel's diner, then, and to the endless night. To the endless night, the others echoed, and for the first time since I'd died. For I understood now that I had died. I felt at peace. Outside, the first hints of a dawn that would never come painted false promises across the horizon. But inside Mel's diner, under the warm glow of fluorescent lights that would never burn out, We had all the time in the world to learn how to let go of the world we'd lost. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Story 5. The call came in at 11:47 p.m., just as I was settling down with a cup of coffee and the late news. Emergency repairs at the Hartwell building downtown. A burst pipe on the 14th floor that was threatening to flood the offices below. The voice on the other end of the line was clipped, professional, urgent. "We need someone there within the hour," the dispatcher said. "Building management is already on site, but they need a certified plumber to assess the damage and get it under control." I'd been doing emergency repair work for 15 years, and late night calls were part of the territory. Pipes didn't respect business hours, and neither did electrical failures, heating breakdowns, or any of the 1,000 small disasters that could turn a building from shelter into liability. I grabbed my toolkit, loaded my van, and headed into the quiet streets of the city. The Hartwell building was a pre-war structure, the kind of solid brick and steel construction that had weathered decades of use and modification. 18 floors of offices, apartments, and commercial space stacked like a vertical city in the heart of downtown. I'd worked there a few times before, replacing fixtures in the lobby, updating some wiring on the 7th floor, but never this late, never with the building so empty and quiet. The security guard met me in the lobby, a thin man with nervous eyes who kept checking his watch as if time were running out. "Thank God you're here," he said, leading me to the service elevator. It's been getting worse by the hour. The water's already started seeping through to the 13th floor. We rode up in silence, the elevator's cables humming their familiar mechanical song. At the 14th floor, the doors opened to reveal chaos. Water spreading across polished linoleum, soaking into carpet, dripping through ceiling tiles that sagged under the weight of accumulated moisture. "Where's the building management?" I asked, stepping carefully around the puddles. "They had to leave," the guard said quickly. "Emergency at another property. But they left the keys and said you had full access to do whatever you need to do." It struck me as odd. Most building managers liked to hover during emergency repairs, especially expensive ones that might require insurance claims. But I'd learned not to question the quirks of property management. I just wanted to find the source of the leak and get it under control before the damage spread further. The burst pipe was in a utility room near the center of the building, hidden behind a service panel that required 3 different keys to access. As I worked to shut off the water main and assess the damage, I noticed something strange about the layout. According to my mental map of the building, there should have been another 20 feet of space beyond the far wall of the utility room. But when I measured it out, the dimensions didn't match. I pulled out my phone and opened the building plans, app I kept for reference, floor layouts, electrical schematics, plumbing diagrams. The 14th floor plan showed the utility room exactly as I saw it, but there was something that nagged at me, a sense that the proportions weren't quite right. The repair itself was straightforward. A section of old pipe had finally succumbed to decades of pressure changes and mineral buildup. I cut out the damaged section, installed a new joint, and tested the system. Water pressure normal, no leaks, crisis averted. but that discrepancy in the room's dimensions continued to bother me. I started measuring more carefully, using my laser level to map the exact dimensions of the utility room and comparing them to the building plans on my phone. The room was definitely shorter than it should have been. About 8 feet of space was unaccounted for, as if there were another room beyond the back wall. The wall itself looked solid enough, covered in the same institutional paint as the rest of the utility space. But when I tapped it with my knuckles, I heard something unexpected. Not the solid thunk of brick or concrete, but a hollow sound that suggested empty space beyond. I ran my hands along the wall, looking for seams, switches, anything that might indicate a hidden door or panel. Near the bottom, my fingers found something. A slight depression in the paint, barely perceptible, but definitely there. When I pressed it, I heard a soft click, and a section of the wall swung inward on hidden hinges. The space beyond was dark and musty, filled with the scent of old paper and something else. Something organic and slightly sweet that I couldn't quite identify. I pulled out my flashlight and stepped through the hidden door. The room was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 8 by 10 feet, with exposed brick walls that suggested it had been part of the original building construction. But it had been modified at some point, wired for electricity, though the fixtures looked decades old, and fitted with built-in shelves that lined every wall from floor to ceiling. The shelves were filled with files. Hundreds of manila folders, all identical, all labeled with numbers in a neat, careful script. I pulled one at random, folder number 2847. Inside were photographs, documents, what looked like surveillance reports, all focused on a single individual, a middle-aged woman I didn't recognize, photographed going about her daily life, shopping for groceries, walking her dog, sitting in what appeared to be a therapist's office. I tried another folder, 1293, a different person, a young man this time, but the same kind of obsessive documentation. Photos taken with a telephoto lens, copies of credit card statements, employment records, medical files. The kind of information that should have been private, personal, impossible for a stranger to obtain. My hands were shaking as I pulled more folders. Each one contained a complete dossier on someone's life, their habits, their relationships, their secrets. The dates on the documents ranged from the 1970s to just a few months ago. Decades of surveillance, of watching, of collecting intimate details about people who had no idea they were being observed. At the back of the room, I found a desk with an old manual typewriter and a stack of reports. The top report was dated just 2 weeks ago, and as I read it, my blood went cold. Subject 3, 1847 continues pattern established in previous reports. Leaves apartment at 7:15 a.m., stops at coffee shop on corner of Main and 3rd. Arrives at office by 8:00 a.m. Lunch typically taken at desk, consisting of sandwich brought from home. Departs office 5:30 p.m. Grocery shopping Tuesday and Friday. Yoga class Wednesday evening. Weekend activities include laundry, housework. Occasional dinner with sister. The report was about me. My apartment, my office, my exact routine down to the coffee shop. I visited every morning. There was a photograph paper clipped to the report. Me leaving my building, taken with a telephoto lens from across the street. I was subject 3, 847. My hands trembled as I rifled through more folders, looking for others that might contain my information. I found them. Dozens of reports documenting my life going back years. When I'd moved apartments, when I'd changed jobs, when I dated Sarah Mitchell for 6 months before she decided I was emotionally unavailable. Photos of me with friends, with family, in moments I'd thought were private. The most recent folder was dated just 3 days ago. Inside was a work order, typed on the same manual typewriter as the reports. Emergency repair needed. Hartwell Building, 14th floor. Pipe failure in utility room. Contact subject 38047 for after-hours service call. Ensure building is empty except for security personnel. A grant full access to utility areas. The work order was signed, but the signature was illegible. Below it, in the same careful handwriting that labeled the folders, someone had written, "Subject shows increasing curiosity about architectural inconsistencies. May require direct intervention." I dropped the folder, my heart hammering against my ribs. This hadn't been a random emergency call. I'd been lured here, manipulated into finding this room. But why? What did whoever was behind this surveillance operation want with me? I heard footsteps in the corridor outside, slow and deliberate. The security guard, maybe, coming to check on my progress. But something about the rhythm of the steps made me freeze. They were too measured, too purposeful. The footsteps of someone who knew exactly where they were going and what they would find when they arrived. I switched off my flashlight and pressed myself against the wall beside the hidden door, trying to control my breathing. The footsteps stopped just outside the utility room. I heard the soft sound of a key turning in a lock, then the creak of the main door opening. "Home a sticker. Davies," a voice called softly. Not the nervous security guard. This was someone else entirely. Someone with a calm, cultured voice that suggested education and authority. "I know you're in there. There's no point in hiding." I remained silent, pressed against the brick wall, clutching my flashlight like a weapon. "You've found our little archive, haven't you?" I must say, it took you longer than we expected. We've been monitoring your response patterns for quite some time now, and you usually investigate anomalies much more quickly. The voice was closer now, just outside the hidden door. "Please don't be frightened. We're not going to hurt you. In fact, we've been quite impressed with your work. Your attention to detail, your problem-solving abilities, your tendency to notice things that others miss. These are valuable qualities." I heard papers rustling, the sound of someone leafing through the folders. 15 years of emergency repair work. You've been inside more buildings in this city than almost anyone except the architects who designed them. You understand infrastructure, systems, of the hidden spaces that most people never see. You've developed an almost instinctive understanding of how buildings work, how they're supposed to feel. The footsteps moved closer to where I was hiding. That's why you noticed the dimensional discrepancy so quickly tonight. That's why you found the hidden door. You have a gift, Mr. Davies. A gift we'd like to help you develop. What do you want? I finally asked, my voice hoarse with fear. Just to talk. To explain. To offer you an opportunity. I heard something being placed on the desk. Papers, maybe, or photographs. The people in these files, Mr. Davies, they're not random subjects. They're individuals who possess certain capabilities. Enhanced pattern recognition, spatial awareness, an intuitive understanding of hidden structures and systems. Like you. I stepped out from my hiding place, flashlight raised but not yet turned on. In the dim light from the corridor, I could see a figure silhouetted in the doorway. Tall, thin, wearing what appeared to be an expensive suit. "Who are you?" "We're researchers, Mr. Davies. We study individuals with enhanced perceptual abilities. We track them, document their capabilities, and occasionally we recruit them." "For what?" "There are things hidden in this city, Mr. Davies. Structures within structures. Spaces that exist between the official blueprints and the actual architecture. We need people who can find these spaces, who can navigate them, who can understand their purpose." The figure stepped forward, and I could see him more clearly now, middle-aged, with carefully groomed gray hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like a professor, or maybe a government bureaucrat. "The Hartwell building has 17 such spaces," he continued. "Hidden rooms, forgotten passages, areas that were built according to plans, that were never filed with the city, never recorded in any official capacity. Most people could search this building for years and never find them. But you found this one in less than an hour. Because you wanted me to find it. You set this up." "Yes, we did. We needed to see how you would react, how quickly you would process the discrepancy and act on it. It was a test, Mr. Davies. And you passed." I looked around the room at the hundreds of files, the decades of surveillance, the careful documentation of people's most private moments. "This is sick. You've been stalking people, invading their privacy, treating them like laboratory subjects. We've been studying them, learning from them, and in many cases, we've been protecting them." "Protecting them from what?" The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "There are others, Mr. Davies. Others who would use people like you for less benevolent purposes. We prefer to think of ourselves as the good guys. But I understand that from your perspective, the distinction might seem academic." He gestured to the desk where he'd placed his papers. "We're offering you a choice. You can walk away from this, pretend you never found this room, never learned about our research. We'll close your file, remove you from our observation list, and you'll never hear from us again. Your life will return to exactly what it was before tonight. Or you can join us, help us map the hidden spaces of the city. Use your abilities for something greater than fixing broken pipes and faulty wiring. We can offer you resources, training, access to knowledge that most people couldn't imagine." I thought about my life, the endless cycle of emergency calls, the loneliness of working while the rest of the world slept, the feeling that I was always fixing things for other people without ever building anything permanent for myself. What kind of hidden spaces are we talking about? Rooms that don't appear on any blueprint. Passages that connect buildings in impossible ways. Spaces where the normal rules of architecture don't seem to apply. His eyes gleamed with something that might have been excitement. Places where the city reveals its true nature. And what is its true nature? That's what we're trying to understand, Mr. Davies. That's what we need your help to discover. I looked at the files surrounding us, at the evidence of lives observed and documented without consent, at the photographs of myself taken without my knowledge. Everything about this felt wrong, predatory, manipulative. But there was also something seductive about the idea of hidden knowledge, secret places, a purpose beyond the mundane routine of repair work. I'd spent my entire adult life maintaining other people's spaces, fixing their problems, keeping their world functional. What would it be like to discover something new instead of just fixing something broken? I need time to think about it, I said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. He handed me a business card, plain white cardstock with only a phone number printed in simple black text. When you've made your decision, call that number. Someone will be in touch. He began gathering up the papers he'd brought, preparing to leave. What happens to the files? To all this surveillance information? That depends on your decision, Mr. Davies. If you choose to walk away, we'll destroy your file and remove all traces of our observation. The others, well, their situations are more complicated. You mean you'll keep watching them? We'll keep protecting them. From themselves, if necessary. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Mr. Davies. Don't try to contact any of the other subjects. Don't attempt to warn them or interfere with our research. That would be inadvisable. Is that a threat? It's a professional recommendation. Good evening, Mr. Davies. We'll be waiting for your call. He disappeared into the corridor, his footsteps fading toward the elevator. I stood alone in the hidden room, surrounded by the evidence of lives reduced to data points, relationships mapped like architectural blueprints, a secrets catalogued like repair manuals. I took the business card and walked back through the utility room, sealing the hidden door behind me. My repair work was complete. The pipe was fixed, the water damage contained. According to anyone who checked the official records, I had simply done my job and left. But as I rode the elevator down to the lobby, I knew that nothing would ever be simple again. The city I thought I knew, the city of visible buildings and mapped streets, of public spaces and private homes, was just the surface. Underneath, hidden in the spaces between blueprints and reality, another city existed. A city of watchers and the watched, of secrets and the people who collected them. The business card felt heavy in my pocket as I walked to my van. Above me, the Hartwell building rose into the night sky, its windows dark, except for the glow of emergency lighting. 18 floors of official space, and 17 hidden rooms that existed in the gaps between what was planned and what was built. I started the van and began the drive home. But I knew I wasn't really going home. I was driving through a city I no longer understood, toward a decision that would define the rest of my life. The card with its single phone number waited in my pocket like a door I could choose to open or leave forever closed. But doors, once discovered, have a way of demanding to be opened. And I'd spent too many years fixing other people's problems to ignore the biggest problem of all. The question of what lay hidden in the spaces we're not supposed to see, and who was watching us from the shadows between the blueprints and the truth. The city stretched out around me, full of buildings I thought I knew, full of secrets I was only beginning to suspect. And somewhere in that maze of hidden rooms and impossible passages, people like me were being watched, catalogued, recruited for purposes I couldn't yet imagine. The choice was mine to make. But as I drove through the empty streets toward an uncertain dawn, I already knew what my answer would be. Some doors, once found, demand to be opened. Some mysteries insist on being solved, even when you know that the knowledge might change everything forever. Story 6. The fluorescent lights hum their familiar lullaby as I begin another night shift at Meadowbrook Care Center. 12 hours stretching ahead like a long, dimly lit corridor. My footsteps echo against the polished linoleum, each step a metronome marking time in this place where time seems to move differently. Room 237 needs checking first. Mrs. Henderson always kicks off her blankets, and the night air grows cold here, seeping through windows that never quite close properly. The building settles around me with creaks and sighs, an old structure breathing in its sleep. I adjust my flashlight and begin my rounds. The beam cuts through shadows that seem to shift just beyond its reach. Down the main hallway, past the common room where chairs sit arranged in their eternal circle, waiting for tomorrow's activities that mirror yesterday's and the day before. The wheelchair sits empty by the nurse's station where I left it. A standard model, chrome and black vinyl, wheels locked in place. I remember wheeling Mr. Patterson back to his room earlier, before my shift began. The chair has been there ever since, hasn't it? My rubber-soled shoes make soft squeaking sounds against the floor as I walk. The heating system clicks on, pipes groaning somewhere within the walls. These old buildings speak constantly if you know how to listen. Tonight, they seem more talkative than usual. Room 241. Mrs. Chang sleeps peacefully, her breathing barely audible above the whisper of her oxygen concentrator. The machine's rhythm is steady, reassuring. In and out, like waves against a distant shore. I pull her door closed gently, the latch clicking with a soft metallic sound. The wheelchair has moved. I stop, my hand still on Mrs. Chang's doorknob. The chair sits 3 feet from where I left it, turned slightly toward the hallway. The wheels are still locked. I can see the brake handles in their engaged position from here. My breath catches a small sound in the quiet corridor. The building settles again, a deep groaning from somewhere in its foundation. These places shift constantly, I remind myself. Temperature changes, settling wood, expansion and contraction. Even locked wheels can slip on smooth floors. I walk back to the chair and position it exactly where it was before. The vinyl seat still holds the slight depression from Mr. Patterson's weight, though he was moved to the hospice wing 2 days ago. The chair feels warm under my hands, warmer than the ambient temperature of the hallway. Room 245. Mr. Rodriguez mutters in his sleep, words in Spanish that flow like water over stones. His dreams seem peaceful enough. I watch his face for a moment, noting how sleep erases years from the deeply lined features. In sleep, we all become children again. The wheelchair rolls past the doorway. This time I see it clearly. A slow, deliberate movement down the hallway, wheels turning soundlessly against the linoleum. The chair moves with purpose, as if someone invisible guides it from behind. But there's no one there. The hallway stretches empty in both directions. My heart pounds against my ribs, a drumbeat that seems too loud in the silence. I follow the chair, my flashlight beam dancing ahead of me. The wheelchair moves at walking pace, unhurried, purposeful. It passes room after room, each door slightly ajar, each room filled with quiet breathing and the soft sounds of sleep. The chair turns the corner toward the west wing. I quicken my pace, my shoes squeaking more urgently now. Around the corner, the hallway extends into deeper shadows. The emergency lighting here seems dimmer, casting pools of amber light every 20 feet. Between these islands of illumination, darkness gathers like standing water. The wheelchair sits motionless at the far end of the hallway, positioned directly in front of room 267. Mr. Patterson's old room. The room that's been empty since he moved to hospice care. I approach slowly, each step deliberate and careful. The air grows colder as I walk, my breath beginning to mist slightly in the flashlight beam. The building's heating system must be uneven in this wing. Old buildings are like that, full of cold spots and drafts. Room 267's door stands open. I always leave it closed after cleaning. Hospital policy requires all unoccupied rooms to remain sealed until new residents arrive. But the door is definitely open now, revealing a rectangle of deeper darkness within. The wheelchair faces this open doorway, as if waiting for something, or someone. I reach for the door handle, my fingers trembling slightly. The metal is ice cold against my skin, cold enough to sting. Through the doorway, I can hear something that makes my blood freeze. The soft whisper of sheets being moved. The gentle creak of bed springs under shifting weight. The quiet, regular breathing of someone asleep. But room 267 is empty, has been empty for days. My flashlight beam cuts into the darkness, illuminating the standard institutional furniture. Bed, nightstand, closet, chair by the window. Everything exactly as it should be, exactly as I left it after the final cleaning. The bed is made with crisp hospital corners, pillows fluffed and positioned precisely. Yet the sounds continue. Breathing, shifting, the subtle sounds of occupancy, as if someone lies invisible upon that perfectly made bed, dreaming their invisible dreams. I step back from the doorway, my heel catching against the wheelchair's footrest. The metal is warm now, warm as body heat. The vinyl seat cushion bears a fresh depression, deeper than before, as if someone has just settled into it. The breathing in room 267 grows deeper, more settled. The sounds of someone falling into deeper sleep, comfortable, at home. I close the door quickly, the latch clicking with finality. The wheelchair sits silent, waiting. I grip its handles and push it back toward the nurse's station, wheels rolling smoothly across the linoleum. The vinyl feels warm under my palms, retaining heat like skin. Back at the station, I position the chair exactly where it belongs. I make a note in the logbook. All residents checked. Building secure. My handwriting looks shaky in the fluorescent light. Letters slightly askew. The clock reads 5:47 a.m. Still 9 hours until the day shift arrives. 9 hours of watching over sleeping residents, monitoring their quiet breathing, ensuring their safety through the long night hours. I settle into my desk chair and pull out a crossword puzzle. 7 across, one who watches over others. 8 letters. Guardian. The letters fill in neatly, ink dark against white paper. From the west wing, I hear the soft squeak of wheels on linoleum. I don't look up from my crossword. 12 down, place of rest. 4 letters. I already know the answer, but I don't write it in. Some words are better left unspoken, even in ink. The wheelchair passes the nurse's station, moving with that same unhurried purpose. I keep my eyes fixed on the puzzle, though I can sense its presence, feel the displacement of air as it rolls past. The vinyl seat creates soft friction sounds against itself, the gentle protests of well-worn materials. It's heading back to the west wing, Back to room 267. I complete 17 across eternal watch. The answer comes easily now, VIGIL. 7 letters that seem to glow under the fluorescent lights. The sounds from the west wing continue throughout the night. Wheels rolling, doors opening and closing, the whisper of sheets and the creak of bed springs, the gentle breathing of someone at rest. At 6 a.m., the day nurse arrives, keys jingling as she unlocks the front entrance. Margaret has worked here for 15 years, her smile bright and practiced as she approaches the station. "How was your night, dear?" she asks, hanging her coat on the rack. Everyone quiet. Very quiet, I tell her, passing over the logbook. All the residents slept peacefully. She flips through the pages, nodding at the routine entries. Her eyes pause at something, a small frown crossing her features. "You have, mister. Patterson still checked off as present," she says gently. "Room 267. He passed away yesterday evening in hospice. Peaceful passing, just after sunset." The pen slips from my fingers, clattering onto the desk. I must have been using an old checklist. Margaret nods sympathetically. "It happens. We all get confused when they leave us. This place becomes so much a part of their routine. Sometimes it's hard to let go." She walks toward the west wing to begin her morning rounds. I hear her footsteps pause, then quicken slightly. When she returns, her face is thoughtful. The wheelchair from the station is down by 267 again. 3rd time this week. These old wheels must not hold their locks properly anymore. I nod, gathering my things. The building settles at night. Things shift around. Margaret is already checking medication schedules, her attention focused on the day ahead. Well, you go on home and get some rest. Sweet dreams. I walk out into the morning light, cool air filling my lungs. Behind me, Meadowbrook Care Center settles into its daytime rhythms. New sounds now, activity, conversation, the bustle of daily care routines. But tonight, when darkness falls again, I'll return. Take my place at the nurse's station, begin my rounds, watch over those in my care. The wheelchair will wait by the desk, patient and still, until the building grows quiet, and the fluorescent lights hum their familiar lullaby. Some vigils never end, some guardians never rest, and some residents never truly leave. The morning sun climbs higher. But already I'm thinking of evening, of the long hallway stretching ahead, of the gentle sounds that fill the spaces between wake and sleep. In a place where time moves differently, where day and night blur into one continuous watch. Who's to say what's real and what's memory? Tonight, I'll check room 267 again. I'll listen for the breathing, watch for the movement of sheets, feel the warmth in an empty wheelchair seat, because that's what guardians do. We watch over everyone in our care, no matter how long their stay, no matter when they choose to rest. The crossword puzzle sits unfinished on my kitchen table at home. 7 down, never ending. I know the answer, but some words are too final to write. Some truths too permanent to commit to ink. Instead, I set my alarm for 10 p.m. and draw the curtains closed. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I can already hear the soft squeak of wheels on linoleum, the whisper of someone settling in for the night, the gentle breathing of those who sleep under my watch. Tomorrow night, I'll return to my post, and the wheelchair will be waiting. Story 7. The dispatcher's booth sits like an island of light in the sprawling darkness of Central Station. Through the tall windows, I watch empty platforms stretch into shadows, tracks gleaming like silver ribbons under the sparse night lighting. It's 11:47 p.m., and the last passenger train departed 23 minutes ago. Now begins the real work of the night shift, freight coordination, maintenance scheduling, and the endless dance of trains that move while the city sleeps. My desk holds the familiar tools of the trade: radio sets crackling with static, computer monitors glowing blue, white, and the large scheduling board that dominates the wall behind me. Red and green lights blink in patterns that tell stories of tonnage and timetables, of steel wheels rolling across hundreds of miles of track. The coffee maker gurgles in the corner, adding its voice to the symphony of electronic sounds. This booth has been my domain for 7 years, every night from midnight to 8 a.m. I know every switch, every signal, every sound this building makes as it settles into the quiet hours. Track 9 shows a maintenance window from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. I make the necessary calls, updating the night crews, confirming that freight train 44071 will use the alternate routing through the eastern junction. The radio crackles with acknowledgments, voices of other night workers scattered across the rail network. At 12:15 a.m., I update the master schedule board. The white magnetic strips slide easily along the metal surface, each one representing a train, a cargo manifest, a carefully orchestrated movement through the darkness. Freight 4471 eastbound 12:45 a.m. Maintenance train 7723 southbound 1:30 a.m. Empty passenger consist 2891 returning to the yards 3 FC 15 a.m. Everything in order, everything accounted for. The coffee tastes bitter tonight, burnt from sitting too long on the heating plate. I adjust the radio squelch, listening to the steady chatter of train crews checking in at distant signals. Mile marker 47 clear, junction 12 all green. The vocabulary of the rails, spoken in tired voices across dark miles. I'm updating the 2 a.m. freight manifest when I notice it. A new entry has appeared on the scheduling board. A white magnetic strip that wasn't there before, positioned at the 2:30 a.m. slot for track 4. The handwriting is mine, though I have no memory of placing it there. Pass. Train 12:07, track 4, 2:30 a.m. Passenger train 12:47. I stare at the board, pen forgotten in my hand. There is no passenger train 12:47 in our system. Passenger service ends at 11:24 p.m. and doesn't resume until 5:30 a.m. Night passenger runs were discontinued on this line 3 years ago. I reach for the strip to remove it, but my hand hesitates. The writing is definitely mine. The same careful block letters I use for all schedule entries. But when did I write it? When did I place it on the board? The radio squelch breaks, static filling the booth. Through the white noise, I hear something that makes my skin crawl. A distant train whistle, long, mournful, approaching from the north. I check the northern approach signals on my monitor. All clear. No trains scheduled on that line until freight 4th hour 71 at 12:45. But the whistle grows louder, closer, the distinctive 2 long, 1 short. One long pattern of an approaching passenger service. Through the booth windows, I can see track 4. The platform stretches empty under pools of yellow light, benches vacant, the electronic departure board dark. But I can hear it now, unmistakably. The rhythmic clacking of wheels on rail joints, the hiss of air brakes, the deep rumble of a heavy consist approaching the station. The clock reads 2:29 a.m. I grab my radio, thumb pressing the transmit button. Control to all stations. This is Central Dispatch. Do we have any unscheduled traffic on the northern approach? Static answers me. Then, through the white noise, a voice I don't recognize. Train 1247 approaching Central Station, track 4. On time. My blood turns cold. The voice is professional, matter of fact, following proper radio protocol. But there is no train 1247. There is no engineer assigned to that number. Our passenger fleet was retired years ago. The sounds grow louder. Metal wheels grinding against steel rails, the pneumatic hiss of doors opening. The subtle vibration that runs through the station structure when a heavy train arrives. I can feel it in my feet, in my chest. The physical presence of tons of rolling stock coming to rest. I look out at track 4 and see nothing. The platform remains empty. No train. No passengers. No movement except the gentle sway of safety chains in the night breeze. But the sounds continue. Doors closing with mechanical precision. The conductor's whistle. The gradual acceleration of a train pulling away from the platform. The radio crackles again. Train 1247 departing Central Station. Next stop, Millbrook Junction. Millbrook Junction. I haven't heard that name in years. The station was closed in 1987, tracks torn up for a highway expansion. There is no Millbrook Junction anymore, just an overpass and a faded historical marker that most drivers never notice. I check the scheduling board with trembling fingers. The white strip for train 1247 is gone. In its place, a new entry pass. Train 1247, track 7315 AM. My handwriting again. Block letters identical to all the others. But I didn't write this entry. I didn't move the strip. I've been sitting at this desk the entire time, watching the empty platforms, listening to phantom sounds. The coffee grows cold in my cup as I stare at the board. Around me, the booth hums with electronic life, monitors flickering, radios chattering, the steady pulse of signals controlling trains that move through the night. Normal sounds, familiar sounds. But underneath it all, I hear something else. The distant rumble of wheels on tracks growing closer. At 3:14 a.m., the whistle sounds again. Same pattern. Same mournful call across the darkness. This time approaching from the east, along the line that leads to the abandoned industrial district, where old rail yards rust under broken streetlights. Track 7 stretches empty before me, but I can hear it clearly, the hiss of air brakes, the mechanical groan of couplers taking up slack, the metallic ping of cooling steel. A train that exists only in sound, in the vibration through the floor, in the mysterious entries that appear on my scheduling board. Train 1247 approaching Central Station, track 7. On time. The same voice, professional and calm. I don't recognize it, but something about the cadence seems familiar. The way the words are spaced, the slight emphasis on time. Like listening to a recording of myself, but played back through some distorting medium. I reach for the radio to respond, but what would I say? What questions could I ask that wouldn't sound like madness? Instead, I sit in silence, listening to the sounds of arrival and departure, watching platforms that remain eternally empty. The scheduling board now shows train 1247 at 400 a.m. at track 2, then 4:45 a.m. track 6, each entry in my own handwriting appearing like clockwork every 45 minutes. A schedule within a schedule, a phantom timetable running parallel to the real world of freight trains and maintenance crews. I pull out the master records, looking for any mention of train 1247. The files go back decades. Yellowed pages chronicling the golden age of passenger service when Central Station bustled with travelers. And there it is, buried in a 1963 timetable. Train 1247, the Night Express. Daily service, Central Station to Millbrook Junction and beyond. The Night Express. I remember now, from childhood trips with my father. The sleek silver cars, the uniformed conductors, the gentle rocking motion as we traveled through darkness toward distant cities. The train that ran when passenger service still meant something, when people dressed up to travel, when arrival and departure were ceremonies of anticipation. But that was 50 years ago. The Night Express was discontinued when interstate highways killed passenger rail. The silver cars were sold off, scrapped, or converted to freight service. The romance of train travel became a memory preserved only in museums and the nostalgic dreams of old men. Yet every 5 minutes I hear it arrive. Every 5 minutes the schedule board updates itself with entries I don't remember making. Every 5 minutes the phantom whistle calls across decades of silence. At 6:30 a.m., dawn begins to creep across the rail yards. The eastern sky lightens from black to deep purple to pale gold. Soon the day's shift will arrive, and Central Station will come alive with the bustle of commuter service, freight coordination, administrative duties. But even in the growing daylight, I can hear it approaching. The unmistakable rhythm of the Night Express, punctual as always, running its eternal schedule between stations that exist now only in memory and the mysterious entries on my scheduling board. Train 1247 approaching Central Station, track 3. On time. This time I recognize the voice completely. It's mine, but younger. The voice I had 20 years ago, when I first started working the night shift, full of confidence and precision, announcing arrivals and departures with professional pride. The voice of someone who believed in schedules, who trusted in the reliability of steel wheels on steel tracks, who found comfort in the ordered progression of trains through the darkness. The voice of someone who never questioned why he was drawn to the night shift, why he preferred the quiet hours when only freight trains moved, why he felt most at home in this booth surrounded by empty platforms. I look out at track 3, and for just a moment I see it. Silver cars gleaming in the morning light, windows glowing warmly from within. The elegant script of Night Express, painted along the sides in flowing letters. Passengers visible through the windows. Men in suits reading newspapers. Women in traveling dresses sipping coffee from china cups. Children pressing their faces against the glass to watch the world go by beautiful. Timeless. Real as memory, solid as longing. The vision lasts only seconds before fading back to empty track and morning shadows. But the sounds remain, doors closing, the conductors all aboard call, wheels beginning to turn with gathering momentum. Train 1247 departing Central Station. Next stop, Millbrook Junction. My radio crackles with routine traffic as the day's shift begins to arrive. Maintenance crews checking in. Freight coordinators updating schedules. The busy chatter of a rail network coming to life. Normal voices speaking of normal things. Tonnage and timetables, signals and switches. I gather my papers and prepare to leave, but the scheduling board catches my eye one final time. A new entry has appeared at the bottom, scheduled for tomorrow night pass. Train 1247, track 4 2:30 a.m., my handwriting, my schedule. My ghost train running its eternal route between what was and what might have been. Outside, The morning sun climbs higher over Central Station. Commuter trains begin to arrive, filled with people starting their day, heading to work, to meetings, to the 1,000 ordinary tasks that make up a life. Real trains with real passengers, running on real schedules. But tonight, when the last commuter train departs and darkness settles over the empty platforms, I'll return to my booth. I'll monitor the freight schedules, coordinate with maintenance crews, ensure the safe passage of trains through the night. And every 45 minutes, I'll hear the whistle of the night express. I'll listen to my own voice announcing its arrival, watch my own handwriting appear on the scheduling board, feel the phantom vibration of silver cars rolling across tracks that shimmer between memory and steel. Some schedules run deeper than timetables. Some trains travel routes that exist beyond the physical world of rails and crosties. And some night dispatchers find themselves coordinating traffic between the trains that are and the trains that haunt the spaces where they used to run. Tomorrow night, train 1247 will arrive on time. It always does. It always has. And in the booth overlooking empty platforms, a night dispatcher will update his scheduling board, making entries in handwriting he doesn't remember, maintaining a schedule that exists only in the space between what was lost and what refuses to be forgotten. The night express runs on time. Every time, carrying passengers who remember when travel was adventure, when stations were gateways to possibility, when the whistle of an approaching train was the most beautiful sound in the world. All aboard. Story 8. The heavy glass doors of Fitzone, close behind me with a pneumatic sigh, sealing me inside the familiar landscape of chrome and rubber. Mirrors and motivational posters. Midnight to 6 a.m., 5 nights a week. This gym becomes my domain. Empty of the grunting, the sweating humanity that fills it during daylight hours. It transforms into something quieter, more contemplative. A cathedral of iron and ambition, waiting for my careful attention. My footsteps echo against the polished concrete floor as I wheel in the cleaning cart, loaded with all the tools of my trade industrial: strength disinfectant, microfiber cloths, vacuum cleaner, mop and bucket. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, casting everything in their cold, clinical glow. Some of them flicker intermittently, creating brief shadows that dance across the rows of machines. I always start with the cardio section. 24 treadmills arranged in perfect rows, their digital displays dark, belts still. The smell of rubber and metal polish hangs in the air, mixed with the faint residue of sweat and ambition that no amount of cleaning can completely erase. Each machine represents thousands of miles run in place, countless hours of effort toward goals both achieved and abandoned. The first treadmill's belt squeaks softly as I wipe down its handrails. A familiar sound. The gradual warming of rubber components settling into position. These machines are precision instruments, sensitive to temperature changes, atmospheric pressure, the subtle vibrations that run through the building's structure. Normal sounds for equipment worth tens of thousands of dollars. I move methodically from machine to machine, following the same pattern I've used for 3 years. Handrails first, then console, then belt. Then the safety clip that dangles like a lifeline for runners who push themselves too hard. The routine is meditative, predictable, comforting in its repetition. Behind me, the first treadmill's belt begins to move. I turn, cloth still in my hand, and watch the rubber surface roll forward at a steady walking pace. The digital display remains dark. No programs running, no user input. Just the quiet whir of the motor and the rhythmic slap of the belt cycling through its endless loop. A power fluctuation, most likely. These old buildings have electrical quirks, especially at night, when the grid settles into lower demand patterns. I reach for the emergency stop button, but before I can press it, the belt gradually slows and stops. Silence returns, broken only by the buzzes of fluorescent lights and the distant hum of the building's HVAC system. I make a note to report the treadmill's behavior to the maintenance staff. Equipment malfunctions are serious business in a gym. Liability issues, safety concerns, insurance claims. The weight room stretches before me, a forest of steel and cast iron arranged in careful patterns. Bench presses, squat racks, dumbbells ranging from 5 pounds to 150, each one precisely placed according to FitZone's strict organizational standards. This section always takes the longest to clean properly. So many surfaces, so many angles where sweat and chalk dust accumulate. I start with the bench press stations, wiping down the vinyl padding that bears the impressions of countless bodies striving to push beyond their limits. The barbell sits in its rack, loaded with 40 5-pound plates, exactly as I left it yesterday. Members are required to return weights to their proper positions, but someone always loads the bar for the next user. An informal gym courtesy that speaks to the community these people share. The weight plates clink softly as I clean around them. Metal expanding and contracting with temperature changes, normal thermal stress that affects everything in the building. The sound is almost musical, like wind chimes made of iron, each plate singing its own deep note. From across the weight room comes another sound, the mechanical whisper of a cable machine in motion. I look up to see the lat pull-down station cycling through its range of motion. The cable moves smoothly up and down, as if invisible hands guide the movement bar through perfect repetitions. The weight stack doesn't move, only the cable itself, sliding through pulleys with well-oiled precision. Another electrical glitch, perhaps triggered by the same power fluctuation that affected the treadmill. I walk over to examine the machine, looking for loose connections or damaged components. Everything appears normal. Solid construction, proper maintenance. No obvious signs of malfunction. The cable stops moving as I approach, settling into its default position with a soft metallic click. The weight stack sits motionless, plates aligned in perfect order, ready for the next user who won't arrive for hours. I continue my cleaning routine, but awareness prickles at the back of my neck. The gym feels different tonight, more alive somehow, as if the accumulated energy of thousands of workouts has created its own presence, a ghost in the machine that stirs when the building grows quiet. The free weight section demands careful attention. Dumbbells must be paired correctly, their numbers facing outward for easy identification. The mirrors need special care, streak-free cleaning that removes every fingerprint, every breath mark, every trace of the people who stare into them while pushing their bodies toward transformation. In the mirror's reflection, I see the rowing machine begin to move. The seat slides back and forth along its rail, following the familiar rhythm of someone pulling against resistance. But no one sits in the seat. The handles remain motionless while the seat glides through its range of motion, back and forth, with the steady cadence of an experienced rower. I turn to face the machine directly, watching it cycle through its phantom workout. The seat moves with purpose, not the random motion of mechanical failure, but the deliberate rhythm of someone who knows how to row properly. Pull, release, slide forward, reset. Pull, release, slide forward, reset. The sound is hypnotic, the whisper of the seat on its rail, the soft click of the flywheel spinning, the almost inaudible whoosh of air through the machine's resistance system. All the sounds of effort without any visible source of energy. I approach slowly, my cleaning cloth forgotten in my hand. As I draw closer, the rowing machine gradually slows its pace, as if acknowledging my presence. The seat completes one final stroke before settling into its resting position at the front of the rail. This is more than electrical malfunction. This is something else entirely. The gym stretches around me, filled with hundreds of pieces of equipment that have absorbed years of human effort. A sweat, determination, frustration, triumph. Every machine holds the memory of countless workouts, the accumulated energy of people pushing themselves beyond their limits, striving for something better. What happens to that energy when the people go home? Where does all that effort go when the lights dim and the building grows quiet? I return to my cleaning with new awareness, listening more carefully to the sounds around me. The subtle mechanical whispers that I've always attributed to thermal expansion and electrical fluctuations take on new meaning. Not random noise, but purposeful movement. The echoes of workouts past, playing out their routines in the empty hours. The elliptical machines begin their synchronized dance as I clean the stretching area. 5 machines moving in perfect unison. Pedals cycling through their elliptical patterns with ghostly precision. The displays remain dark, but the machines understand their purpose, remember their function, continue their eternal workout without need for human guidance. I should be frightened, but instead I find the movement oddly comforting. These machines were built for motion, designed to facilitate the endless human quest for fitness, strength, endurance. In their phantom operation, they fulfill their essential nature, true to their purpose even in emptiness. The sounds layer together into a complex symphony. The whisper of treadmill belts, the click of weight stacks, the glide of rowing seats, the rhythmic thump of elliptical stride patterns. A mechanical orchestra performing the music of effort, each instrument playing its part in the larger composition of self-improvement. I clean to this soundtrack, moving through my routine while the gym pursues its own nocturnal workout. The machines seem to acknowledge my presence without interference, continuing their cycles while I work around them. A peaceful coexistence between the living and the mechanical, the real and the remembered. The free weight dumbbells shift slightly on their racks, adjusting their positions with tiny metallic clinks. Not falling or sliding, but settling into more perfect alignment, as if invisible hands arrange them for optimal presentation. The weight that was slightly askew straightens itself. The pair that was separated by an inch closes the gap. Even at rest, the gym maintains itself, pursuing the orderliness that makes it functional, beautiful, ready for the people who will arrive with the sunrise. At 3 a.m., the phantom workout reaches its peak intensity. Every section of the gym pulses with activity, cardio machines maintaining steady rhythms, weight stations cycling through their ranges of motion, cables and pulleys operating in smooth coordination. The building vibrates with purposeful energy, alive with the accumulated muscle memory of every person who has ever pushed themselves within these walls. I work within this mechanical ballet, part of the performance now, my cleaning routine choreographed to avoid the moving equipment. I understand the patterns, anticipate the cycles, move in harmony with the gym's nocturnal pulse. This is not chaos or malfunction, but order of a different kind. Purpose expressing itself through steel and rubber, ambition made manifest in chrome and leather. The mirrors reflect the empty gym, but the sounds tell a different story. Breathing that isn't there. Footfalls on treadmill belts, operated by invisible runners. The grunt of effort from vacant bench press stations. The gym's acoustic memory, replaying the sounds of transformation, echoing with the voices of everyone who has ever counted reps, timed intervals, pushed through pain toward their personal goals. By 4 a.m., the intensity begins to subside. Machines slow their cycles, weight stacks settle into silence. The phantom exercisers apparently reaching the end of their nocturnal routines. The gym enters its cool, down phase. Mechanical breathing growing deeper and slower. The frenetic energy of peak workout time giving way to the peaceful exhaustion that follows good exercise. I finish my cleaning as the equipment completes its invisible stretching routines. Final gentle movements, settling into rest positions, preparing for the day to come. The treadmills coast to stops, belts rolling to a halt with satisfied sighs. Weight machines complete their final repetitions and fall silent, ready for real hands to guide them through real workouts. The building grows quiet, except for the usual sounds, HVAC systems, electrical hum, the distant traffic of a city that never truly sleeps. But underneath these familiar noises, I can still hear the subtle whispers of a gym that remembers its purpose, maintains its readiness, stays true to its essential nature, even in the empty hours. At 5:30 a.m., I pack my cleaning supplies and prepare for the end of my shift. The gym sits in perfect order, every surface sanitized, every weight in its proper place, every machine positioned for optimal use. In an hour, the doors will open, and the first early morning exercisers will arrive, unaware that their equipment has been warming up all night, practicing its routines in the darkness. I wheel my cart toward the exit, but something makes me pause and look back. In the dim emergency lighting that will hold until the main systems activate at 6, the gym appears to rest peacefully. But rest with purpose. Like an athlete between sets, gathering energy for the next round of effort. My reflection multiplies in the wall of mirrors, creating an infinite corridor of cleaning carts and tired custodians. But for just a moment, I could swear I see other figures in those reflections. Shadowy forms using the equipment, ghostly exercisers running their eternal workouts. The accumulated spirits of everyone who has ever sweated and struggled within these walls. The vision lasts only seconds before resolving back to my own tired face and the empty gym beyond. But the feeling remains. This place is never truly empty. The energy people invest here doesn't simply dissipate when they leave. It becomes part of the gym itself, stored in the machines like potential energy waiting to be released. I understand now why I'm drawn to the night shift, why I prefer the quiet hours when the gym reveals its true nature. During the day, it's a business, a service, a collection of equipment and membership fees. But at night, it becomes something more, a repository of human ambition, a mechanical memory palace where the echo of every workout continues to play. The glass doors seal behind me as I step into the pre-dawn air. The city is waking up around me, early commuters beginning their daily journeys, the eternal cycle of work and rest and renewal. Behind the glass, Fitzone waits in darkness, patient and ready. Tomorrow night, I'll return to my routine cleaning, sanitizing, maintaining the careful order that makes the gym functional. And the machines will perform their phantom exercises, cycling through their ghostly routines, keeping themselves limber and ready for the hands that will guide them through real workouts. Some places accumulate more than dust and wear. Some buildings store the energy of human effort, the accumulated weight of every repetition, every mile, every drop of sweat shed in pursuit of something better. And some night custodians find themselves caretaking not just equipment, but dreams made manifest in steel and rubber. The phantom workout never truly ends. It just pauses, waiting for darkness to fall again. You for the building to grow quiet, for the machines to remember their purpose and express it in the only way they know how, through motion, through rhythm, through the eternal repetition of effort that defines both human ambition and mechanical function. In the growing light of morning, I can already hear tomorrow night's symphony beginning to compose itself. The whisper of belts on rollers, the click of weight stacks, the rhythmic breathing of a gym that never truly rests. Music to clean by mechanical meditation, the sound of purpose pursuing itself through the empty hours. Fitzone opens at 6 a.m. sharp every day, ready for another cycle of human transformation. But it never really closes. In the space between official hours, it continues its work, maintaining itself, practicing its routines, staying true to the essential nature that makes it more than just a collection of expensive exercise equipment. It's a place where effort echoes, where ambition accumulates, where the boundary between the mechanical and the spiritual grows thin in the quiet hours. And I'm its guardian, its witness, its partner in the dance between maintenance and memory, between cleaning and keeping watch over something that refuses to be contained by business hours or locked doors. Tomorrow night, the phantom workout begins again. Story 9. The Hendersons' house settles into evening quiet as I lock the front door behind them. Date night, they said. Their first in months since moving to this old Victorian on Maple Street. 7-year-old Emma is already tucked in upstairs, and I have the house to myself until they return around midnight. Easy money for what should be a peaceful evening of homework and Netflix. The house carries the particular silence that belongs to old buildings creaking wood, settling foundations. You the whisper of wind through window frames that have weathered decades of seasons. Built in 1924, Mrs. Henderson told me during our introductions. Full of character and charm. The kind of house where families have lived and loved and grown old. Where children's laughter has echoed through rooms now filled with different furniture, different voices, different dreams. I check on Emma first, climbing the narrow staircase that groans softly under my weight. Her room is the third door on the right, painted a cheerful yellow with white trim, and decorated with unicorn posters and stuffed animals. She's already asleep. Brown hair spread across her pillow, breathing the deep, peaceful breaths of a child who feels safe and loved. The night light casts gentle shadows across the room, a small lamp shaped like a crescent moon, providing just enough illumination to navigate without disturbing her sleep. I pull the door almost closed, leaving it cracked according to Mrs. Henderson's instructions. Emma sometimes calls out in the night, she explained. Nothing serious, just the occasional bad dream or need for water. Downstairs, I spread my textbooks across the dining room table and settle into homework. Calculus tonight. The equations and derivatives that require careful concentration. The house provides a soundtrack of settling beams and clicking radiators, the comfortable sounds of a home at rest. At 19:30, I hear Emma talking upstairs. Soft conversation, too quiet for me to make out individual words. She must be talking to one of her stuffed animals. I think, common behavior for children her age. Imaginative play continuing even after bedtime. The boundary between waking and sleeping still fluid at 7 years old. The conversation continues for several minutes before fading into silence. Normal, nothing concerning. Children often talk themselves to sleep, working through the day's experiences, processing emotions and events through the lens of play and imagination. I return to my calculus, working through problem sets that require careful attention to detail. The numbers dance across the page in neat rows, each equation a small puzzle to solve, each solution building toward understanding of larger mathematical concepts. At 10:07:15, Emma's voice drifts down again. Clearer this time, and I can catch fragments of her side of what sounds like a conversation. "Can't go to sleep yet," she says, followed by a pause as if listening to a response. Then, "But Mama said I have to stay in my room." I set down my pencil and listen more carefully. Emma speaks in the tone children use when talking to friends, animated, engaged, responding to comments and questions from someone else. But she's alone in her room. I saw her sleeping peacefully less than an hour ago. "Sarah doesn't believe you're real," Emma continues, her voice carrying the slight indignation of someone defending a friend. "But I told her you are. You just like to hide." Sarah must be a classmate, perhaps someone who's been skeptical about Emma's imaginary friend. Perfectly normal social dynamics for children, the complex negotiations of friendship and belief that characterize elementary school relationships. The conversation continues for another 10 minutes before Emma's voice grows softer, more tired. Eventually, silence returns to the upper floor. She's probably fallen asleep while talking, imagination finally giving way to dreams. I try to focus on my homework, but something about the conversation nags at me. The pauses Emma took, as if actually listening to responses. The way she seemed to react to things being said, laughing at unheard jokes, agreeing with unspoken suggestions. More interactive than typical imaginary play, more responsive than talking to stuffed animals. At 11 p.m., footsteps cross the floor above my head. Soft footsteps, light and quick, moving from Emma's room toward the bathroom at the end of the hall. Then back again. The familiar pattern of a child's nighttime routine. She must have woken up needing the bathroom. Nothing unusual in that. But the footsteps don't stop at Emma's room. They continue down the hallway, pause at the top of the stairs, then begin descending. I look up from my textbook, expecting to see Emma appear in the dining room doorway. Instead, the footsteps reach the bottom of the stairs and stop. The house falls silent, but I can sense presence in the front hallway, just out of sight. "Emma," I call softly. "Do you need anything, sweetie?" No response. The silence stretches for several seconds before the footsteps resume, moving back up the stairs with the same light, quick pattern. A door closes gently somewhere on the second floor. I should check on her, make sure she's okay. But something keeps me rooted to my chair, a strange reluctance I can't quite explain. The footsteps sounded right for a 7-year-old child. But there was something about their rhythm, their confidence in navigating the dark house, that seemed unusual for a recently awakened child. My calculus problems sit forgotten as I strain to hear any other sounds from upstairs. The house has returned to its normal nighttime quiet. Settling wood, heating system cycling on and off, the distant hum of traffic from the main road several blocks away. At 11:20, Emma's voice returns, clearer than before. "I know she heard us," she says, excitement making her whisper louder than intended. The babysitter lady downstairs. A chill runs down my spine. She's talking about me, discussing me with her imaginary friend, as if they're planning something together. Children do this, I remind myself. They incorporate real people into their fantasy play, assign roles and motivations to adults based on limited understanding of grown-up behavior. "She seems nice, though," Emma continues. "Not scary like the last one. The last babysitter, Mrs. Henderson, mentioned they were new to the area, hadn't found a regular sitter yet. But Emma speaks as if there have been others, as if this is part of an ongoing evaluation process. Maybe we should go say hello," Emma suggests, followed by a long pause as if considering a response. "Okay, but just at the top of the stairs." Footsteps again, but this time moving with deliberate stealth. 2 sets of footsteps, I realize with growing unease. One light and quick, child-sized. The other softer, more cautious, but definitely there. 2 people moving carefully across the upstairs floor, trying not to make noise. But Emma is alone in her room. Has been alone since her parents left for the evening. There's no one else in the house except me. The footsteps pause at the top of the stairs. I can feel eyes watching me from the darkness of the upper hallway, though I can't see anything from my position at the dining room table. The sensation of being observed, evaluated, discussed in whispered tones just beyond the reach of my hearing. "Hello," I call, trying to keep my voice normal, friendly. "Emma, is that you? Do you need anything?" Quick footsteps retreat down the hallway, followed by the soft sound of a door closing. But I could swear I heard 2 sets of feet moving away. 2 different patterns of movement across the old wooden floors. I force myself to return to my homework, but the equations blur together on the page. My attention keeps drifting to the sounds from upstairs. Continued conversation, occasional soft laughter, the creak of bed springs as if 2 children are sitting on Emma's bed talking in the darkness. At 11:45, silence falls completely. No more voices. No more footsteps, no movement from the second floor. Emma has apparently fallen asleep, her imaginary friend dismissed for the night, leaving me alone with my textbooks and the settling sounds of the old house. The Hendersons return at 12:20, keys jingling in the front lock. Voices warm, with the pleasant tiredness of adults who've enjoyed an evening out. Mrs. Henderson asks how Emma behaved, whether there were any problems. The standard check in questions that responsible parents ask their babysitters. She talked for a while before falling asleep. I report. Seemed to be playing with an imaginary friend. Mrs. Henderson and her husband exchange a look. Something that passes between them too quickly for me to interpret fully. But I catch the edge of it concern, mixed with resignation. The expression of parents dealing with a situation they don't entirely understand. Emma's mentioned her friend several times since we moved here. Mrs. Henderson explains carefully. A little girl named Sophie who likes to play in her room. The previous owners mentioned that children used to live here, so we think Emma might have heard stories and incorporated them into her play. Sophie likes this house, Mr. Henderson adds with a forced smile. Apparently she's been here for a long time. They pay me for the evening and drive me home, making small talk about school and my weekend plans. Normal conversation, the kind of casual interaction that concludes a typical babysitting job. But something in their manner suggests this isn't entirely typical. That Emma's imaginary friend represents a situation they're still learning to navigate. A week later, they call again. Date night number 2. Same arrangements, same instructions about Emma's bedtime routine and the nightlight in her room. I accept, curious despite my unease about the previous evening's events. This time, I pay closer attention from the beginning. Emma goes to bed without protest, but I can hear her talking before I've even finished cleaning up the dinner dishes. The same conversational tone, the same pattern of speaking and listening, responding to unheard comments and questions. The babysitter is here again, Emma says, her voice carrying easily through the old house's thin walls. She's nice, but I don't think she believes you're real. A pause, then Emma's laugh, light and genuine. She will when she sees you. The conversation continues as I settle into homework at the dining room table. But tonight, I position myself where I can see the front hallway and the bottom of the stairs, unwilling to be surprised by footsteps in the dark. At 10:30, they come down together. 2 sets of footsteps on the stairs, as clear and distinct as if 2 children were walking side by side. Light, quick steps in perfect synchronization, descending with the confidence of kids who know every creaky board, every safe place to step. The footsteps reach the bottom of the stairs and pause. In the hallway mirror, I catch a glimpse of movement, a shadow that seems too substantial for one small child, too complex for simple tricks of light and darkness. Emma, I call softly. Is everything okay? We're just getting some water. Emma's voice comes from the kitchen, though I never saw her cross the dining room to get there. Sophie was thirsty. I hear the refrigerator open, the sound of glasses being filled, cabinet doors opening and closing. All the sounds of 2 children navigating a nighttime snack, sharing space and resources with the familiarity of good friends. But when I work up the courage to look in the kitchen, I see only Emma, standing on a step stool at the sink, carefully filling 2 glasses with water. She handles both glasses as if they weigh the same, sets them both on the counter with equal care, treats them both as necessary and normal. This is for Sophie, she explains when she notices me watching. She gets thirsty at night. Emma carries both glasses upstairs, moving slowly to avoid spilling. I follow at a distance, staying in the lower hallway where I can observe without intruding. At the top of the stairs, Emma pauses and extends one glass toward empty air. "Here you go," she says warmly. The glass disappears from her hand. Not falls, not drops, but vanishes as if invisible fingers have taken it from her grasp. Emma continues to her room, talking quietly to the space beside her, discussing plans for tomorrow's play and whether Sophie will join them for breakfast. I stand at the bottom of the stairs, staring up at the empty hallway, trying to process what I've just witnessed. Rational explanations cycle through my mind, tricks of light, sleight of hand, the power of suggestion creating false perceptions. Children are remarkably skilled at making adults see what they want them to see. But the glass was real, the water was real, and Emma's behavior suggests not performance, but genuine interaction. The unconscious naturalness of someone engaged in actual social exchange. Over the following weeks, I babysit for the Hendersons regularly, and each time I observe more evidence of Emma's extraordinary friendship. Toys that move when no one is touching them. Conversations that involve complex back and forth dialogue. Games that require two participants, played with enthusiasm and joy that can't be entirely fabricated. Emma never seems afraid or concerned about Sophie's unusual nature. To her, this is simply friendship in its purest form. Two children who enjoy each other's company, who share secrets and games, and the simple pleasure of having someone who understands them completely. The house itself seems to embrace this relationship, providing space and acceptance for whatever Sophie represents. Old houses carry memories, accumulated energy from decades of human habitation. Perhaps they also carry the capacity for relationships that transcend the usual boundaries of physical existence. I never see Sophie directly, never hear her voice independent of Emma's responses. But I feel her presence in the movement of air that follows no discernible pattern, in the sense of being observed by someone just beyond the range of perception, in the way the house seems more alive when Emma is playing with her invisible friend. Some friendships exist beyond the normal parameters of social interaction. Some bonds form between hearts that recognize each other regardless of the physical circumstances that separate them. And some children possess the openness to embrace relationships that adults would question, doubt, or dismiss as impossible. In room 7 of the old Victorian on Maple Street, two little girls play together in the space between what is and what might be, their laughter echoing through chambers where imagination and reality meet. I'm just the babysitter, the guardian of their nighttime world, the witness to a friendship that reminds me that the most meaningful connections often exist beyond the reach of adult understanding. Sophie may be invisible to me, but she's real to Emma, and in the end, perhaps that's the only truth that matters. In the space where children play and dream and believe in possibilities that adults have forgotten, two friends continue their eternal games, watched over by someone who's learned to accept that some mysteries are more beautiful when left unexplained. Tomorrow night, I'll return to babysit again, and in room 7, Emma and Sophie will continue their friendship, playing games that span the boundaries between seen and unseen, known and unknowable, real and imagined. I'll listen to their laughter, Watch their shadows dance in the night light's glow, and guard their secret world with the reverence it deserves. Some friendships transcend the limits we place on reality. Some bonds exist in the spaces between heartbeats, in the pause between question and answer, in the moment when belief becomes more powerful than proof. And some babysitters find themselves protecting not just sleeping children, but the magic that makes childhood the most honest time of life, when impossible things remain beautifully, mysteriously possible. Story 10. The apartment above mine has been empty for 3 months now. I know this because I watched the moving truck take away the last of Mrs. Henderson's belongings on a Tuesday morning in June. The realtor's sign appeared in the window by afternoon, and it's been there ever since, gathering dust and slowly fading in the summer sun. But every night at 11:47 p.m., I hear the footsteps. They always begin the same way, a single, deliberate step directly above my bedroom. The old wooden floors creak with that particular sound of weight settling, the way floors do when someone pauses, listening. Then another step, and another. Always the same rhythm. Always the same path across the ceiling above my head. I've lived in this building for 7 years. I know every sound these walls make. I know the way the pipes rattle when Mrs. Chen on the first floor runs her dishwasher. I know the wheeze and clunk of the elevator as it passes my floor. I know the particular groan the building makes when the wind picks up from the east. But these footsteps, these are different. They don't belong to the symphony of sounds I've grown accustomed to. They're foreign, intrusive, impossible. Tonight, like every night for the past 3 months, I lie in my bed and listen. The clock on my nightstand glows 11:46 p.m. in soft blue digits. 1 minute until they begin. I count my breaths in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. A technique I learned to manage anxiety, though I'm not sure it applies to situations like this. Is it still anxiety when the thing you're anxious about defies all logic? 11:47 p.m. The first step echoes through the ceiling, vibrating through the wooden beams and into my skull. I feel it as much as I hear it, a deep, hollow sound that seems to originate not from above, but from somewhere inside my own head. Then silence. 15 seconds of silence, exactly. I've timed it. The second step follows the same path, from what would be the living room area above, toward what should be the kitchen. I know the layout by heart, because it mirrors my own apartment. Mrs. Henderson used to invite me up for tea sometimes. I know where her couch sat, where her dining table stood, where she kept her collection of ceramic cats on the windowsill. All gone now. All of it loaded into that moving truck on that Tuesday morning in June. Step. 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 The rhythm is hypnotic, almost meditative. I find myself synchronizing my breathing to the sound, my heartbeat adjusting to match the cadence. It's not unpleasant, exactly. There's something almost comforting about the predictability of it, the way it cuts through the uncertainty of sleep and dreams. But tonight feels different. Tonight, the steps don't follow their usual path. Instead of moving toward the kitchen, they stop, right above my bed, right where I'm lying, staring up at the ceiling with eyes that have grown accustomed to the dark. I can make out the water stain, shaped like a bird in flight, the hairline crack that runs from the light fixture to the far corner. Details that have become as familiar as my own reflection. The silence stretches. Not 15 seconds this time, 30, 45, a full minute. I hold my breath, waiting. The air in my bedroom feels thick, heavy with the weight of anticipation. I can hear my pulse in my ears, steady and loud. I can feel the cotton of my sheets against my skin, suddenly too warm, too restrictive. Then I hear something new, something that makes my spine straighten and my hands clench the blanket. Scratching. Gentle, rhythmic scratching coming from directly above my head, like fingernails dragging across wood, like someone trying to claw their way through the floor. I tell myself it's a branch against the window. But we're on the 4th floor, and there are no trees tall enough to reach the windows here. I tell myself it's mice in the walls. But I've never heard mice that sound so deliberate, so purposeful. The scratching continues for exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds. I know because I watch the digital display on my clock, counting each second as it passes. Time moves differently at night, stretching and contracting like a rubber band. 3 minutes can feel like hours. Hours can disappear in what feels like moments. When the scratching stops, the silence that follows is absolute. Not even the usual sounds of the building, no distant traffic, no humming of appliances, no settling of old wood. Just silence, thick and oppressive, pressing down on me like a physical weight. I close my eyes and try to sleep, but sleep feels impossible now. My mind races through explanations, each more unlikely than the last. Maybe there's a leak, and the maintenance crew is working at night. Maybe there's a security guard doing rounds. Maybe Mrs. Henderson left something behind and came back to get it. Maybe I'm losing my mind. I've considered that possibility more than once over the past 3 months. Auditory hallucinations aren't uncommon. Stress, isolation, lack of sleep, they can all contribute to hearing things that aren't there. But hallucinations don't usually follow such precise patterns. They don't maintain such consistent timing. And they don't usually involve furniture. Because now, as I lie here in the dark, I can hear something being dragged across the floor above me. Something heavy, something substantial. It scrapes and bumps along the wooden boards, moving from the area above my bedroom toward what would be the living room. I know that sound. I heard it 3 months ago, on that Tuesday morning in June. It's the sound of Mrs. Henderson's antique dresser being moved. I helped her position it by the window so she could see the park while she did her hair. It was solid oak, impossibly heavy, with brass handles that had turned green with age. But the dresser is gone. I watched them load it onto the truck. I watched them carry it down 4 flights of stairs, the movers grunting and sweating under its weight. The dragging sound continues for several minutes, punctuated by the occasional thump as the furniture encounters some obstacle, a doorframe, perhaps, or an uneven section of floor. I know every imperfection in those boards above me because they match the ones in my own apartment. The slight dip near the bathroom door, the raised section where the building settled unevenly decades ago. Then, as suddenly as it began, the dragging stops, but the footsteps resume circling back toward my bedroom. Slow, measured steps that seem to vibrate through the entire structure of the building. I feel them in my chest, in my bones, in the deepest parts of my brain where fear lives and breathes. 11:52 p.m. 5 minutes since it all began. 5 minutes that feel like hours. I decide to investigate. not because I'm brave, but because the uncertainty is worse than any truth could be. I slip out of bed, my bare feet silent on the cold hardwood floor of my own apartment. I move through the darkness by memory, navigating around furniture, avoiding the floorboards I know will creak. The hallway outside my apartment is lit by a single emergency light that casts everything in a sickly yellow glow. I climb the stairs to the 5th floor, each step careful and deliberate. I don't want whoever is up there to know I'm coming. The hallway on the 5th floor is identical to my own, same faded wallpaper, same worn carpet, same smell of old wood and cleaning products. But standing here, looking at the door to the apartment above mine, I notice something I hadn't seen before. Light. A thin strip of warm light seeping out from beneath the door. The apartment has been empty for 3 months. The electricity was shut off when Mrs. Henderson moved out. I know because I saw the utility workers come and go. I saw them disconnect the power meter in the basement. But there's definitely light coming from inside the apartment. I approach the door slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. The brass numbers 5B catch the hallway light and gleam dully. I can hear something from inside now, something beyond the footsteps and the furniture moving, humming. Someone is humming a melody I almost recognize, something old and familiar. A lullaby maybe, or a song from childhood. The voice is thin, wavering, like an old recording played at the wrong speed. I press my ear to the door, holding my breath, straining to hear more clearly. The wood is cool against my skin, and I can feel vibrations through it, the subtle tremors of movement inside the apartment. The humming stops abruptly. I freeze. Every muscle in my body tense, waiting. Did I make a sound? Did something give me away? Then I hear footsteps approaching the door from inside. Slow, deliberate steps growing louder as they draw nearer. I can picture them crossing the living room, moving past where the couch used to sit, approaching the entryway. They stop just on the other side of the door, inches from where I'm standing. I hold my breath so long that spots begin to dance in front of my eyes. I'm afraid to move, afraid to breathe, afraid that the slightest sound will give away my presence. But somehow I know it's too late for that. Somehow. I know that whoever is inside is already aware of me. I hear the soft sound of breathing on the other side of the door. Slow, measured breaths that mirror my own. And then, so quietly I almost miss it, a whisper, I know you're there. The voice is familiar, impossibly, terrifyingly familiar. It's my own voice. I stumble backward, my vision spinning, my legs weak and unsteady. The hallway tilts and sways around me, like the deck of a ship in a storm. This isn't possible. This can't be happening. But as I retreat toward the stairway, I hear the sound of a lock turning. The door handle moves, twisting slowly in the yellow light of the emergency lamp. The door begins to open, just a crack at first, then wider. I don't wait to see who or what emerges. I turn and run, taking the stairs 3 at a time, not caring about the noise I make. I burst into my own apartment and slam the door behind me, turning the deadbolt and sliding the chain into place. But locks won't keep out whatever lives upstairs. I know this with a certainty that comes from somewhere deeper than logic, somewhere older than reason. I return to my bedroom and sit on the edge of my bed, staring up at the ceiling. The water stain shaped like a bird, the hairline crack running from the light fixture to the corner. everything exactly as it was, as it has always been. 11:58 p.m. The footsteps resume above me, following their familiar pattern across the ceiling. But now I know something I didn't know before. Now I understand why they sound so familiar, why the rhythm matches my heartbeat, why the path across the floor mirrors my own movements through my apartment. The person living upstairs isn't a stranger. It isn't Mrs. Henderson, come back for something she forgot. It isn't a squatter or a maintenance worker or a figment of my imagination. It's me. Another version of me, perhaps, or the me I might become, or the me I once was. Living in the same apartment, following the same routines. Lying awake at night listening to the sounds from below. And tomorrow night at 11:47 p.m., I'll hear the footsteps again. I'll count the seconds between each step, time the scratching, map the path of the dragging furniture. I'll tell myself it's impossible, that the apartment is empty, that there must be some rational explanation. But deep down, in the place where truth lives regardless of what we tell ourselves, I'll know better. I'll know that the line between what's real and what isn't has become so thin it might as well not exist at all. I'll know that I'm listening to myself, living parallel to myself, trapped in a building where time bends and reality shifts, and the only constant is the sound of footsteps on the floor above. The clock reads 12:00 a.m., midnight. The footsteps stop, as they always do. The apartment above falls silent, as it always does, and I settle back into my bed, pulling the blanket up to my chin, closing my eyes and waiting for sleep that may or may not come. Because tomorrow night, at 11:47 p.m., it will all begin again. And maybe tomorrow night, I'll have the courage to knock on the door upstairs. Maybe I'll finally meet the person who shares my voice, my footsteps, my insomnia. Maybe I'll finally meet myself. But probably not. Probably. I'll do exactly what I've done every night for 3 months, lie here in the dark, listening to the impossible sounds from the empty apartment above, and wonder if madness feels exactly like this. Slow, gradual, almost comforting in its consistency, almost like coming home. Story 11. I've been delivering food for 3 years now, mostly night shifts, because the pay is better and the traffic is lighter. You learn to navigate the city differently in the dark, by the glow of neon signs, by the rhythm of traffic lights, by the subtle variations in how different neighborhoods sound when everyone's asleep. You also learn to recognize the regular customers, the ones who order the same thing every week, the ones who tip well, the ones who never turn on their porch lights, the ones who answer the door in bathrobes, apologetic and grateful for hot food at midnight. But 412 Maple Street is different. The orders started 6 months ago. Always the same 2 large pizzas, 1 pepperoni, 1 plain cheese, extra breadsticks, and a 2-liter of Coke. Always placed around 11 p.m. Always with the same special instructions. Leave at door. Do not knock. Cash under mat. The first time I delivered there, I thought it was just another cautious customer. Maybe someone who worked nights and didn't want to be disturbed. Maybe someone with social anxiety who preferred to avoid face-to-face interaction. I see it more often than you'd think. So I followed the instructions. I walked up the cracked concrete path, past the overgrown hedge that blocked most of the house from street view, climbed the 3 wooden steps to the small front porch. The money was there. As promised, 40. $3 in small bills, tucked under a faded welcome mat that looked like it hadn't been replaced in decades. I left the food by the door and walked back to my car. As I pulled away, I glanced in my rearview mirror, expecting to see the porch light come on or the door crack open. But the house remained dark, silent, still as a photograph. That was 6 months ago, and nothing has changed. Same order, same time, same instructions. Same empty house that never shows any signs of life. At least, that's what I tell myself it is, empty. But empty houses don't need food deliveries twice a week. Empty houses don't leave exact change under welcome mats. Empty houses don't generate the subtle wrongness that makes my skin crawl every time I turn onto Maple Street. Tonight feels different, though. Tonight, the wrongness is stronger, more immediate. It starts as soon as I get the order notification on my phone, the familiar address appearing on my screen, like a summons I can't ignore. I load the food into the thermal bag and start the drive across town. The city at midnight has its own personality, quieter than during the day, but not silent. There's the distant hum of the highway, the occasional police siren, the low rumble of late night buses carrying shift workers and insomniacs. Street lights create pools of yellow warmth in an ocean of darkness, and between them, anything could be hiding. I know the road to 412 Maple Street by heart now. Left on 5th Avenue, right on Central. A straight through the tunnel under the railroad tracks. Then a winding path through the residential area where the houses get older and the trees get bigger and the shadows get deeper. Maple Street sits in what used to be the nicest part of town back in the 1940s. The houses are large and well built, but many of them have been divided into apartments or left to decay. It's the kind of neighborhood where you can still see traces of former elegance in the architectural details, but where the overall impression is one of slow, graceful decline. 412 Maple Street fits this pattern perfectly. It's a 2-story colonial with good bones, solid brick construction, tall windows, a wide front porch with decorative columns. But the paint is peeling, the gutters sag, and the yard has the wild, unkempt look of a place where no one bothers to mow anymore. I park at the curb, same spot as always, and gather the food from my passenger seat. The street is quiet tonight, more so than usual. No dogs barking. No television shows flickering through curtain windows. No distant music from someone's late night party. Just silence, thick and heavy as fog. I walk up the path, noting the same details I've observed dozens of times before. The crack in the third paving stone. The way the hedge has grown to completely obscure the front windows. The loose board on the second porch step that creaks under my weight. But tonight, I notice something new. The welcome mat has been moved. Not far, just a few inches to the left, but enough that I can see the outline of where it used to sit. The wood beneath is a different color, protected from the weather for what looks like years. I lift the mat and find the money, as always. $43 in small bills. But the bills feel different tonight, older, softer, like they've been handled many times. I hold one up to the porch light, and something makes my stomach turn over. The date on the $20 bill is 1987. I stare at it for a long moment, trying to process what this might mean. Old money isn't impossible. Some people keep cash for years, decades even. But combined with everything else about this place, It adds to the wrongness that has been building in my chest since I got the order notification. I set the food by the door, same as always. 2 large pizzas, breadsticks, and soda. Enough food for a small family, although I've never seen any evidence that more than one person lives here. Never seen evidence that anyone lives here at all. As I turn to leave, I hear something that makes me freeze in place. Footsteps, coming from inside the house. They're slow and deliberate, moving across what sounds like hardwood floors. I can track their progress, starting from somewhere deep in the house, moving toward the front, toward the door where I'm standing. I should leave. Every instinct I have is screaming at me to get off this porch, get in my car, and drive away. But curiosity, or maybe something stronger than curiosity, keeps my feet planted on the weathered wooden boards. The footsteps stop directly on the other side of the door. I can sense a presence there, someone waiting just inches away from me, with only a thin barrier of wood between us. The air grows thick, charged with the kind of tension that comes before thunderstorms. Then I hear a voice, muffled by the door, but clear enough to understand. Thank you. 2 words spoken in a tone that's perfectly ordinary, polite, grateful. The kind of thing any customer might say to a delivery driver. But the voice sounds exactly like mine. I stumble backward, nearly tripping over the loose board. This isn't possible. I'm standing on the porch. The voice came from inside the house. But it was my voice, my exact tone and inflection, saying words I didn't speak. I run to my car, my hands shaking as I fumble with the keys. The engine starts on the 3rd try, and I pull away from the curb with tires squealing. In my rearview mirror, the house remains dark and still, giving no indication that anything unusual has happened. But I can't shake the memory of that voice. My voice, coming from inside a house where no one should be living. I drive straight home and try to sleep, but sleep won't come. I lie in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the night. By morning, I've almost convinced myself that I imagined the voice, that stress and too many late nights have made me paranoid. But 3 days later, another order comes in. Same address, same food, same instructions. I accept the delivery, telling myself that I need the money, that I can't let fear interfere with my job. But as I drive toward Maple Street, I feel the wrongness building again, stronger this time. It sits in my chest like a weight, making it hard to breathe. The house looks exactly the same, dark windows, overgrown yard, that sense of abandonment that clings to it like morning mist. But as I walk up the path, I notice something that makes my blood run cold. There are tire tracks in the driveway, fresh tracks leading from the street to the garage at the back of the house. The same pattern as my tires, the same width as my car. But my car is parked at the curb. I can see it from where I'm standing. I approach the front porch on unsteady legs. The money is under the mat, as always. But tonight it's different money, crisp new bills that smell like fresh ink. I check the dates automatically now, and they're all from this year. I set the food by the door and turn to leave. But the footsteps start again before I can take a single step. Slow, measured steps crossing the house toward the front door. But tonight, they're accompanied by something else, a sound I recognize but can't immediately place. Keys jingling. Car keys, specifically. The same sound my keys make when I walk. the particular metallic chime of the bottle opener keychain my sister gave me for Christmas 2 years ago. The footsteps stop at the door, and I hear the voice again. My voice. Thank you. Drive safe. Drive safe. Something I say to myself every time I start the car. A little ritual I picked up after a close call with a drunk driver last year. No one else knows about it. No one else would have any reason to say those exact words in that exact way. I'm running before I realize I've decided to run. I leap off the porch, sprint down the path, throw myself into my car. But as I fumble with the ignition, I see something that makes the world tilt and spin around me. There's another car in the driveway. A car identical to mine, down to dent in the rear bumper, and the parking permit hanging from the rear-view mirror. And standing beside it, barely visible in the shadows cast by the overgrown hedge, is a figure. A figure that moves like me, stands like me. It tilts its head in the same questioning way I do when I'm confused or afraid. The figure raises its hand in what might be a wave or might be a warning, and I see my own face looking back at me. Not similar to my face, not reminiscent of my face, my actual face, wearing the same expression of confusion and terror that I know must be on my face right now. I floor the accelerator and tear away from the curb, not caring about speed limits or stop signs. I drive until I'm across town, until the familiar landmarks of my own neighborhood come into view. I park outside my apartment building and sit in the car for an hour, waiting for my hands to stop shaking enough to safely navigate the stairs to my door. But even here, in the safety of my own space, I can't escape the questions that chase themselves around my mind like cats chasing their tails. Who is living at 412 Maple Street? Why do they look like me, sound like me, drive the same car as me? How long has this been going on? And the most disturbing question of all, if that was me standing in the driveway, then who am I? I call in sick for the next week, claiming food poisoning. I don't want to work. I don't want to drive around the city at night. I don't want to risk getting another order for 412 Maple Street. But avoiding something doesn't make it go away. After 7 days of hiding in my apartment, eating canned soup, and trying to convince myself that I imagined everything, I know I have to go back. I have to understand what's happening to me. I drive to Maple Street during the day this time, when the sun is bright and the shadows are short, and the world feels more stable, more logical. The house looks different in daylight, smaller, more ordinary, less threatening. Just an old house in need of maintenance, nothing more. I park across the street and watch for signs of life. For 3 hours, I see nothing. No movement behind the curtained windows. No cars coming or going. No sounds from inside the house. It might as well be empty. But as the sun begins to set and the shadows start to lengthen, I see something that makes my mouth go dry. A figure moving past one of the upstairs windows. Just for a moment, just a glimpse, but enough to confirm what I already know. The person living in that house is me. Another version of me, or a copy of me. Or the me I might have been if some crucial detail of my life had been different. They're living my life in parallel, ordering the same food I might order, driving the same car I drive, speaking with the same voice I speak with. But which one of us is real? As I sit in my car watching the house grow dark, I realize that this might be the wrong question. Maybe we're both real. Maybe reality is more flexible than I've always assumed, capable of supporting multiple versions of the same person, the same life, the same moment. Maybe 412 of Maple Street exists in the space where these realities touch, where the boundaries blur, where one version of me can meet another across an impossible distance. I start the engine and drive away, but I know I'll be back. Tomorrow night, when the order comes in, and it will come in, I'll accept the delivery. I'll drive through the dark streets to the house where another me is waiting, and I'll leave the food by the door. And maybe, eventually, I'll find the courage to knock, to stand face to face with myself and ask the questions that have no answers, to discover whether the me inside the house is as confused and frightened as the me standing on the porch. But probably not tonight. Tonight, I'll deliver the food and listen to my own voice, saying thank you from the other side of the door, and I'll drive away wondering which side of reality I belong on. The delivery business teaches you a lot about the city at night, about the hidden corners where ordinary rules don't apply, about the spaces between what we think we know and what actually exists, about the fact that sometimes the most terrifying thing you can encounter in the dark is yourself.